This week on Just a Dog podcast, I'm joined by Hasan Yiğit Aktaş. Hasan is an animal behaviourist and ethical breeder, specialising in primitive and spitz breeds such as Akitas, Shibas, Huskies and Shikokus. Originally from Turkey and Kazakhstan and now based in Lithuania, Hasan combines academic study in animal psychology and behaviour with hands-on experience gained from horse sanctuaries, wolf dogs, and generations of family breeding. His philosophy centres on trust, respect, and breeding practices that prioritise the health, the temperament, and the long-term welfare of both dogs and their future guardians. Right, on with this week's episode. Hasan, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing. So we've already spoken very briefly. You're joining us from Lithuania in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by complete darkness and quiet. Where are your dogs at the moment?
They're all asleep in the living room. After a long walk, they're now done. That's it.
Amazing. Where do you normally take them for a walk? In the woods?
Yeah, so we normally
in the forest?
We normally do between like 2 to 4 kilometers through the woods, like the woodland area. There's like a really cool track that people follow, sometimes for picking mushrooms because that's super popular here. But we go along that route, and depending on the day, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 4. Sometimes we'll walk the coast completely because we live right near the beach too, so it ends up becoming 6 kilometers in the end. But yeah, it depends on the day. But yeah, regardless, they come home with zero energy, and the last thing they want to do is wake up or do anything else, so they just sleep after that.
I'm so envious. You've got the best of all the worlds there. You've got a forest, you've got the beach, peace and quiet without like the remoteness, without anybody there.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful. Hasan, I would love to know more about how you became a breeder.
Sure. It was an accident, really. My dog just started gaining weight, and a lot of weight. And naturally, as a concerned owner, I just took her to the vet and said, this is happening, what can you do about it? And they basically said, nothing to worry about. It's a phantom pregnancy. If you don't know what that is, blah, 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 whatever. And I already knew what it was. And so I was like, okay, if you're saying it's a phantom pregnancy and you've done a scan, and they did, no problem. That's fine. And then a few weeks after that, again, more weight gain. And I didn't really worry about it because I was like, okay, they said it's a phantom pregnancy, so nothing to worry about here, really. And I got a bit concerned. So I even started like running with her to try and make her like lose some weight, because I thought this is getting ridiculous. Like she looked huge. And then a few weeks after that in bed, I remember she used to sleep in bed with us because at the time she just used to walk into the bedroom and do that. But when she wakes up, she normally rolls on her belly and asks for belly rubs, like most dogs do. And I instantly remember having a heart attack moment because I could see little something poking from her belly, like pushing out. And it almost looked like a paw print. And I was like, oh my God, they're lying to me. Believe it. And like the thing is, because I'd witnessed so many breedings with my dad and everything, I know what it looked like at the final stages. So I panicked again, called the vet, and they said, oh, the next appointment is next week. And I was so angry with them. I was like, you have no idea what's going on right now. I'm coming now. And I remember they took me in the room, and before the scan even happened, she just started dripping milk from her nipples. And I was like, there's no point scanning because she would not have milk there if she wasn't pregnant. So they refunded me for the scans, and they basically said, there's 3 or 4 maximum, is what she told me. And I said, great. So I took her home, prepared for the breeding to happen. Lord and behold, 7 of them come out, not 3 or 4. So I don't know what kind of machine technology they use, whatever. But yeah, 7 came out, all healthy, all fine. And I was so happy because it was such a big litter. To survive for that amount is a big deal too. So that happened. And then, time passed and they grew and they developed and everything, and we looked after them quite a lot. And the biggest challenge was one of them had kennel cough as a puppy, and we really didn't think that he was going to make it, to be honest with you, because he just couldn't breathe much. And so he would sleep on my chest sometimes and my wife's chest the other times, and we would just try to force him to breathe a lot. And we would squeeze air into his nose and stuff like that just to make him breathe a bit more. But yeah, that was my first time as a solo breeder. With my dad, there's been maybe 20, 30 plus, and we used to help out other villagers with their pregnant dogs and stuff like that. And I've always been in that environment. Like, I've never not been in that setting, but doing it solo with just me and my wife at the time was a completely different experience. And in my mind, it was so funny because half the things that we were doing during the birth was muscle memory, and it's not even comprehending in my head what I'm doing. And I'm just going into that mode, pulling them out, giving them to the nipple, whatever. And yeah, so that was the first time experience. But yeah, it was super, super stressful just because we just weren't prepared for it in any way. So many things were needed for the birth. Like, we didn't even have a pen for the puppies or anything like that. I remember they were born, and a few days after, Amazon delivered the pen and the other medical supplies that we needed and the puppy formula, whatever. We had nothing. It was just in the moment,
Yeah. Where was that, and what was the breed?
Akita.
An Akita. And
Yeah.
were you still in the UK, or?
Yeah, I was in Brighton, and like the even crazier thing was that at the time my rental agreement was no more than 4 dogs, and I went from having 4 to having 11. And the even scarier thing was that I was actually doing a law degree at the University of Brighton, and so I was going through my final year of uni with the litter, and so the amount of times I went to uni with the litter in a buggy, I would push a buggy full of puppies into the university and just sit in a lecture taking notes while they slept and stuff like that. And then during lecture breaks, people would come and take them out and walk them around the university and stuff like that. And it was great because the amount of exposure they got from people, sounds, different smells, all that stuff, it was great. It was like every single puppy owner from that litter always comments about how they just don't care about anything in public. Like, they don't have any anxiety in any way because they've been through everything. The university at the time was installing a new bridge to connect the 2 blocks that we had in between the blocks. And the amount of construction drilling sounds that those puppies slept through was insane. And so now they just don't have any anxiety towards sound in any way. They don't care about anything because they've seen it, done it, whatever, and they just don't care anymore.
So you became an Akita breeder by accident. Akita, and also which other breeds of dogs do you breed?
So we breed Shibas too. We haven't had like our own Shiba breeding yet. That will be in January, the first one that we do. We had a lot of issues with like getting health testing recognized and things like that, because in the UK they said to us, "Oh, you don't need to do any health testing." And then when we spoke to one health center, they said they wouldn't book us in for it for some reason, and then we ended up moving country, so it was never done from that perspective. Luckily for Akita, they said the Kennel Club replied to us and said, no health testing is necessary for this breed.
Okay, so this was your first accidental breed with the Akitas?
Yeah.
Right. So prior to that, you had experience of breeding with your dad in, where was it? In
Norfolk.
In Norfolk, that's it. Yes.
Yeah.
So your dad taught you how to do whelping.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, he was like the chief in that sense. Yeah, he taught me everything I know pretty much about it. But yeah, we never bred in Norfolk. It was always in Kazakhstan and in Turkey. So every time we would go for holiday, and stuff like that, a lot of villagers would just have pregnant dogs constantly, because they're always off lead, walking around everywhere. So it would be like if we're a mix of one breed and another, it would be like a deliberate Kangol breeding for a farmer who had a male and a female and wanted to have more guarding dogs walking around the area and stuff like that. Super, super common, like in Turkey and Kazakhstan, for people to have Kangol, or at least like livestock guarding breeds, to breed more of them and to try to have more surrounding their area kind of thing. Like, wolves killing livestock is such a big issue in North Turkey and in Kazakhstan. So it's really, really common. But yeah, I learned a lot during that time in terms of like whelping and how to raise them and how to fix issues between packs and stuff like that. It was really, really important for me in my development as like a behaviorist. I would say even it was more crucial to me than going to uni, because you see real life problems and you deal with them properly. So
my experience of the Kangol dogs, I've been to Istanbul, and they're like, they're just giant dogs. They're near the mosques and they kind of patrol. It's really funny, actually. I called them police dogs, even though they're not necessarily police dogs. But whenever the police car would drive, like the tourist police or whatever, these dogs would just start following the car, and I'd be like, yeah, they could be police officers.
Character-wise, they're not very fitted to that kind of role.
Yeah, exactly. That's the impression that I got when I was there. But what I loved about going to travel in Turkey was I saw how well they are looked after. in comparison to other countries, for example. Even though they've got their ear tags and stuff, they're still being fed. I saw one gentleman take his leather jacket off and put it on the ground for one of the dogs to sleep
Yeah.
on. I thought that was really lovely, and it was very telling about the culture.
Yeah,
I
cats
know,
especially, like cats get treated immensely great in Turkey. Oh my God, I
really.
can't. Yeah, find any street cat in Turkey, there is maybe less than a meter away. There's a big bowl of food and a big bowl of water somewhere,
Oh,
100%.
bless. That's
100%.
amazing.
And
That's so cool.
even in cafes and restaurants, yeah, they come and steal food, but it's because people let them, and that's what they gotten used to. So as a tourist, you might think like, oh, this pesky cat has stolen my meatball or whatever, but actually, they've gotten so used to locals just giving them whatever that they just take it now. They don't even care.
That's so cool. Going back to the breeding, how did you decide to become a full-time breeder? Is that what you are doing at the moment? Full-time breeding and
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
training?
I would categorize myself as that. Yeah, for sure. I definitely do a lot more training than I do breeding, but because again, you want to be careful about these things. Because for a female, you realistically only have like 3 or 4 opportunities to have a good breeding. So you need to be very strategic about which male you pair up with, the temperament of that male. What it will cultivate for the future. And again, when it comes to my experience as a breeder, I would definitely say that I'm not really in it for the sake of money or anything like that, or for the sake of like, oh, this is something that's like in terms of like economical standpoint, like profitable for me in any way. I always say to people, if your idea is to profit from breeding, good luck, because it's not likely that you're going to get there and still be like an ethically good person, because the amount of people that breed their dogs constantly, and again, this is a big problem everywhere, not just in the UK, but you look at the pedigree of some dog and like there's one male that a breeder has, for example, that's been used 18 times, and it's like, that's insane. You're destroying the gene pool by doing that, because every dog that you've produced since is now related to one another. Like in the future, if there was like a shortage of a breed, for example, I couldn't use one dog with another dog because they're half siblings or they're half cousins or something like that. Or in the family tree, they're too closely linked to being inbred in some way, and so again, like anyone's welcome to have a look on my Kennel Club profile, but all of my dogs that are registered on my Kennel Club profile either have 0.0% inbreeding coefficient or 0.1% inbreeding coefficient. The lowest one that I have actually is my Shiba. She has 0.001% inbreeding coefficient. So there's no chance at all that anyone near the family tree of hers has been used to create her, which is great. And new blood is a really, really important thing for the breed. But going back to the question, yeah, like training and breeding, yeah, for sure. It's at the core of my being, but I'm a trainer before breeder, 100%, because I'm doing this from a preservation standpoint, not to pay for things in my life or in any way.
Okay. So let's go back to the breeds themselves. So typically, historically, the Shiba, the Akita, and the Shikoku are breeds that originated from Japan. What were they used for back in the day? What were they initially bred for, their purpose?
So Akitas were predominantly used for chasing out bears, hunting bears in rural Japan. Later on, they had a bit more of a guardian role, and they would protect the Japanese royalty. So they became that much later on. Shibas were classic samurai companions, and when samurais would travel through different areas of rural Japan, for example, they would bait out game, and so they would kind of almost distract bigger animals until a hunter would come by and take them out, or they would hunt small prey, for example, which is why, again, you see so many different Shibas today that have a bit more of a primitive instinct, and other ones that are a bit more diluted by bloodline, so to speak. They have less of that, and they're not too bothered about pigeons and foxes and other stuff that we see in like an urban environment, so to speak. Yeah, Shibas were used for that predominantly, and you still see a lot of that characteristic having an active role today. Shikoku is one of the only ones, I would say, that still hasn't quite come to that stage of being diluted enough to be a common house pet. I don't consider my Shikoku, her name's Ruriko, by the way. I don't consider Ruriko as a dog personally. I don't see her as a dog at all. She is a beast of a different nature in her own being, I would say. I don't trust her near my cat in any way, shape, or form. She's too primitive and very, how to put it, she has an insane prey drive. And so even if, like, for example, there could be like a little mice running around here, which is very common where I live, goes mental. And again, it's a
Wow.
great sniffing game for her, because if I let her out in the garden, she spends 20 minutes trying to find the mice that was here 2 hours ago. And so 20 minutes of that, her mind is gone after that, but she reacts to possibly everything out there. And I don't think that the breed has come to a stage where you could live in a place like the UK, for example, and be fine with that kind of dog, like owning it specifically. But um, they were used for boar baiting, so boars would exist somewhere, and the Shikokus would just start trying to flush it out into a corner or something like that, so a hunter would come and kill it. And even to this day, they're still being used for that purpose. And I really do believe that we're a long way away from the Shikoku becoming a bit more of a civilized common dog breed that we
Companion
have
pet.
today. Yeah, even when you look at
Mm.
her, there's something in her eyes, and like you don't think. It's really tough to put it, but when you look at her, you can tell that it's not like a dog. You can tell it's like a different thing entirely, And even if you research them, a lot of people argue that it's actually like a wolf hybrid, and there's a lot of the old Japanese wolves that have existed back then still carrying. Well, they still carry the bloodline of this type of wolf specifically, and you can 100% see that. She only wags her tail if she's tracking an animal or seeing something that she wants to go for. She doesn't wag her
Oh,
tail the way a normal dog does when they're happy to see whatever. When she's wagging her tail, I'm actually worried, because I'm thinking, what if he's seen? What are you going to try and go for? I need to figure out what it is before you do that. And out of all the
yeah.
dogs, she's the only one that doesn't have off-lead privileges, because I just don't know what she will do um, if she ends
Right.
up going into that environment.
How old is she now?
2.5.
She's 2. And how did you get her? How did you get your hands on a Shikoku?
She came from the same breeder that I bought my Akitas from, and she lives in Poland. She has been accredited by the Japanese Federation of Dogs and every other accreditation you could possibly find about Nihon Ken breeds. Nihon Ken is the Japanese breeds that exist, and all the primitive breeds that are in originating from Japan. So all the Nihon Ken, she's accredited for all that sort of stuff. But she knew we were moving to Lithuania, and we had plans to get out of the UK to move to the EU. And she basically messaged to say that she wants to co-own a Shikoku with somebody. The initial plan was that co-owning is a funny one, because you need to trust the other person really well to allow that to happen, because that person could potentially just take a free dog from you, and then after that breed or do whatever they want with it, because it's in their ownership now. Um, Especially when it crosses countries, because even though I signed a contract with my breeder saying that I will agree to the terms that she set, uh, a contract made in Poland doesn't have any precedent in the UK. So I could have realistically done whatever I wanted to. And again, there has been other people breeding Japanese breeds with the same sort of gray area, whatever you want to call it, legal loophole, if you will, who shouldn't have bred those dogs, but they have done. But yeah, we kept that dog like that. Basically, she asked if I could co-own and if I would be willing to share responsibility and possibly breed her in the future, because Shikokus are really well known for having epilepsy and weak stomachs, really bad digestion, and a whole list of other like genetic problems. But Ridicule was one of the few that was actually quite healthy, and so quite desirable in that sense. And the breeder didn't want to sell her so that someone else would have the right to do whatever later on. And she just wanted to find someone trustworthy that she could eventually say, look, these are my plans, and you won't fight it, you won't disagree with me, whatever. You'll do it for the sake of preservation and good breeding. So I agreed to it from that. And it was even after Brexit, so we couldn't even have it delivered to England the way that we did with the Akitas. We ended up driving to France and picking her up from there, and then we took her home to the UK after that. So yeah, that was how I got my hands on her.
Are there any other Shikokus in the UK that you know of?
They're increasing quite a lot. So at the time when we had Ridicule, there was only about like 11 or 10 or 11 maybe in the UK, and now like it's around, I would say, 16 to 20. There was a litter of Shikokus recently that Animal Watch covered not long ago. And so, yeah, it is an increasing thing. But at the same time, because it's not a breed recognized by the Kennel Club, people are able to acquire these breeds and breed them without any restriction or any testing or anything like that. And so um, it's kind of sad to see, but at the same time, it's good if people have the right attitude and they're willing to take on the commitment of a dog that's of this caliber. Because I used to think that, as long as I give Ruriko the right stimulation that a Shikoku needs, and do things like man trailing and like barn hunts and scent trail related games, whatever, I really did believe that the dog could thrive and be normal and be okay living in a place like Brighton, for example, compared to here where she has woodland and she can pretty much, I can let go of the long line and she can just do whatever she wants kind of thing, and then she's knackered, comes home, rest, whatever, or she can chase some mice or whatever and do whatever. I'm not saying people can't do this in the UK in any way, but or I'm not saying that people can't take their Shikokus to a woodland area, but the fact that she's not constantly bombarded by cars and children and like all these other sounds that exist in an urban environment, I can tell that she's a lot more calm generally, and she's not reacting badly to anything that's going on. Like, even if we have like delivery runs and stuff like that coming through here, she doesn't get in any way anxious by them. And whereas before, I remember I would deliberately avoid the school run because if children came running out the gate, she would just get too overly stimulated, poo on the ground out of fear, and just lose it all trail of thought. And it was really tough to redirect her to focus on me, to just get home, even if it was like a 2-minute walk. That would be enough for her to get triggered in that sense. And we don't have enough people teaching their children that you can't just come to a dog and stroke it or squeeze its cheeks or grab its tail or something like that. In like the year and a half that I've had in Lithuania, even though we've been going to town and things like that and getting out of the remote area, I've never had anyone or anyone's children come and touch the dogs without consent. Mothers always hold their children's hands, and I've even seen mothers like grab their children from their shirts and like yank them back kind of thing, almost forcefully, to say, no, that's not your dog. You can't go to that dog. You need to wait and ask, and only then. And children are really respectful about it, and turns out it's taught in schools. So it's great that children learn these things. But yeah, I can tell that the previous environment wasn't really the best for her, and now she's thriving a lot better here.
That's so good. I recently learned a little bit about something called genetic drift. Could you explain what that is?
Yeah, sure. Genetic drifting, as I understand it, has always been about overbreeding dogs and sort of certain characteristics being passed off into a different direction. Some dogs that are known to be a specific character trait no longer having that character trait. A good example is Kaikens, for example, Japanese breeds. They're known for being super confident. But yet there was an owner of this breed in the UK who everyone that I spoke to about this owner said that, oh, his dog is really anxious because all he does is put it into public situations, and it's a bit traumatized from that sort of thing. And it's like, okay, if a dog that you have brought on, and maybe it's a puppy, whatever, why would you put it in a situation where it's public and it's open and everyone can just come and touch your dog, and you don't really read your dog well enough and advocate for your dog, and now it's super anxious. I saw this dog at a dog show too, and the anxiety that it had was so high level to the point where even the judge of the dog show was saying it's not suitable to be judged because it's completely against the character trait that it's in. So we see this quite a lot happening to different breeds too. And again, you could even argue that my Akitas being sociable is a genetic drift because they're known to be aloof. So you could argue that that's the case. And again, this is a big topic when it comes to the genes of the dog, because I don't know if you know this, but in Japan, when they do dog shows for Akitas specifically, for the males, instead of having them stacked in that pose that they're normally in, they actually get two males to face each other, and they want to see some anger. They want to see the expression of the dog when it gets angry. They encourage this quite a lot too. And the thing is that if your dog doesn't react in an aggressive way, it's considered a gene fault. And it's considered that your dog doesn't have the right temperament to be an Akita, whatever. So a lot of dogs get disqualified based off of this, and a lot of Japanese breeders do say, oh, we don't like these friendly Akitas. When I'm judging a dog, when I'm touching it, I want to feel the dog vibrate, and I want to see that it's uncomfortable, that it wants to go for me. And that's what I'm looking for, because that's how it should be, apparently. But a lot of Japanese breeders, they complain about European breeders because they have friendlier dogs, or because they have dogs that won't react to a male in that way. My Akita is a bit like that too. When he meets a male, he's actually quite friendly. And unless the male growls, then he doesn't have any reason to be different in any way. He's not very dominant in character either. So it's considered a bit of a drift from the original genes of the dog, so to speak. And a lot of talk about certain qualities being bred out of the dog, which I do partially agree with, because at the end of the day, we're not hunter-gatherers anymore. We're not in situations where I need to go to the woods and find a deer to eat or something like that. So I don't have any reason to put my dogs in scenarios like that, nor do I need to encourage particular dominant or aggressive traits in my dogs. And I don't like the idea of it at all in any way. I always try to discourage it and stamp it out in every single character that meets. Like the other day, my male Shiba that I got tried to hump my male Akita from behind. Very brave move considering he's only 5 kilos and my Akita's 31 kilos. Again, Itchy growled at him and he got pretty dominant about it, but he gave up after a few seconds and he hasn't tried it again, you know? So, again, it shows good character on his behalf, but a lot of people would argue and say that the fact that he didn't try and hurt the puppy is actually a bit of a gene problem and maybe he's not mind-wise correct to how he should be. But I just see a great level of self-control and good moral, so I continue.
Interesting. So that genetic drift, is that so genetically that includes health and behavior?
Yeah, I mean, like when it comes to health, the biggest problem in Akitas is the fact that males look like females and females look like males. There's a different scientific term for this that I've completely forgotten now. But when a dog comes to conformation or to be exhibited, at least, it should be obvious from the face, apparently, that it's a male or if it's a female. And again, a lot of females are starting to have like boxier snouts and loose hanging lips, almost like a mastiff kind of thing. And my female Akita has slight looser lips, I would say, like around the muzzle area compared to my male. And so you could potentially argue that my male looks a bit more feminine than my female. But a lot of the times we're seeing the breed getting bigger in weight and legs becoming taller and all these things happening more in the UK than I would say compared to the EU, because in the EU I would say that dogs are a bit smaller, at least Akitas are a bit smaller compared to how they are in the UK. Because when I used to take my male Akita for dog shows in the UK, a lot of people would say, oh, you know, maybe it's a gene problem because he looks quite small for a male. And it's probably due to genetics that he's a bit smaller. And I would often see what they meant because my Akita's head would be here and everyone else's would be like here. And so like an obvious comparison that, whoa, my dog maybe should be bigger. But taking him here to the EU, he's actually similar height, if not taller than some other dogs that are in the ring next to him. So you see it happening quite often. But I would say that in the UK at the minute, we're seeing the Japanese Akita turn very similar to size and looks-wise, very comparable to the American Akita. And it shouldn't be the case at all, really. I mean, you shouldn't see that happening as much. But with some dogs and some examples, you are seeing that that's the case 100%. You know, again, it differs from kennel to kennel, but the size difference isn't as big as what it used to be, in my opinion, at least anyways. And so when it comes to health of these dogs, I would say, yeah, they're getting bigger and bigger, which is an issue for people further down the line, because at some point someone's going to want this dog and maybe think that it's too big for them. And actually character-wise, they're gentle giants and they're a bit more lazier compared to huskies, I would say. And like the exercise that you need to do for an Akita, I wouldn't say is like immensely great if you look at all dog breeds in general, requirements-wise. And it may deter people from getting it. But also at the same time, if the dog's being bred to be bigger in any way, when it gets aggressive or tries to bite someone, is it going to deliver more harm and more, I don't know, impact on bite? Probably, yeah. So when it comes to handling this breed too, in like an aggressive standpoint, you don't want to be that person who has a dog that now used to be smaller and is now much bigger and dealing with aggression later on. You know?
Wow. Okay. So going back to what you were talking about, confirmation, very briefly, can you explain what confirmation is?
Yeah, sure. So, just as like a advice thing for people that are thinking about buying dogs in general, if your breeder is not in confirmation, it's a red flag, because it's definitely something that you should be doing if you want to be considered a good breeder. So confirmation is when people take their dogs to a dog show to be judged, preferably under a specialty judge, but you get these things called all breed judges now, who are, as the name suggests, they're qualified to judge all breeds. But if you go to a specialist judge who has taken exams specifically for your breed, at that point you get better feedback from them, and the judging becomes a bit more how to put it, descriptive and a bit more well-rounded, in my opinion, at least anyway. So conformation is when you take your dog to a ring and you make it stand in its natural standing position. You can adjust it to make the dog look more flattering to the judge, for example. But ultimately, what they're looking for is you take a few steps, and however your dog's legs and front legs and back legs naturally fall into place, that's what it looks like. There's several videos and photos of it online, but conformation is essentially proof that your breeding is up to standard, you know? So in the UK, you get given first, second, third, and reserve, which is fourth place. And you go up in the ranks depending on that. In Europe, you get given a card that says good, very good, excellent, and then I think perfect too. I can't remember if it's just excellent and that's it, or if it's perfect after that. But you get given a scorecard based off of the head, the front legs, the chest, and the back legs. You get scored on all these things collectively. So you get to know what it means. But in order to qualify to breed, your dogs must get 3 excellence in different shows from different judges. So in Europe, it's quite common to have dog shows go on for 3 days. And so you get 3 different judges throughout the course of those 3 days. Not so common in the UK, sadly, but it's an easy way to gain enough qualifications for your dog to hopefully breed in the future. So in Europe, most other countries, but Lithuania specifically, you have the Lithuanian Kennel Club. And in order to have a kennel, for example, you need to go for an exam that teaches you the realities of breeding, how to breed effectively, how to raise puppies. You get given a course basically on how to become a breeder. And unless you pass the exam, you can't breed, at least not legally. There's other people who obviously do it through back channels and everything, but no one's ever going to buy from them because the Lithuanian government heavily presses on the fact that you need to buy from ethical breeders who have passed the exam, who have that certification. And so that business is pretty much dying in Lithuania as it is, like inbreeding and backyard breeding and all that stuff. Very little people are puppy farming out here. It's all people that have the accreditation mostly, like 95% of people, I would say, easily. But yeah, once that's done, you then need to show that you have 3 excellent scores from different judges on a card, which again, it's tracked because when you get these points given to you, you hand it into like a reader, and that reader will put it on your account saying that you've received 3 excellents from these different judges. And what judges normally do, they write a critique after you've shown your dog. So they will say, you know, dog had a really nice head, very flattering expression, looked really good on the move. I did not see anything that displeased me. Something along those lines. You can get bad critiques too, obviously, if your dog's not good. It's that they won't always write positive things. It's only if your dog is actually good. And so the Lithuanian Kennel Club, the LKD, they will look at your points and they'll look at your critiques and they'll see your account. And after that, they will give you permission. And the same goes for female breeding too. You need to ask permission. You need to pre-notify them that you're planning on breeding, and only when they give you permission can you go ahead and do it.
Okay. Why, from your perspective, why do people breed dogs beyond money and other incentives?
I think it's more of the case where if people don't, then eventually these breeds will go completely extinct and we won't have them. But also I think that these breeds, especially like for primitive breeds, they need to be bred from good examples and people that have the best interest and will give them the right start in life so they can be good companions for people. You know, that you'll find many people who wanted a breed for so long, like specifically one certain breed, and they get it from a breeder who didn't necessarily do the right work with that dog. And maybe that person wasn't equipped to be doing dog training, or they didn't know much, or maybe they just had money to buy a dog and not to invest in training later on, you know. I think people mainly do it from a standpoint that these dogs need to be bred in an environment that is good, wholly good, so they can develop a good character, but also because people can have ultimately the dream that they had or the idea that they had, and it's a good idea, it's a good dream. It doesn't turn into a bad nightmare, whatever. They're not spending countless amounts of money training the dog, whatever. And I think, yeah, with regards to why people breed, I think that's mainly it really, is that preservation, so the breed ends up becoming better and better with each generation, but also people have lifelong family members that are ultimately a good addition, a good decision for their lives, you know, for as long as the dog lives, pretty much.
I see. Okay. Is breeding still lucrative today?
Depends on who you ask, because you meet people who breed like doodle noodles, for example, or like long-haired Frenchies, or they breed like, I don't know, these silver pit bulls or silver dachshunds, whatever it might be. All these designer breeds that, again, if I went on to list all of them, we'd be here till the end of the episode. But those people, yeah, it's lucrative for them because, you know, they'll get these dogs, for example, and be like, okay, it's 10,000 for a dog, which is not, in some people's eyes, crazy amount of money. But I don't know, if you're a rich influencer, or I don't know, you're somebody else who money isn't an object to you, you will think that it's an amazing, creation, and for that reason you end up buying it. It's definitely lucrative, because at the end of the day, if it wasn't lucrative, shelters wouldn't be full constantly. That's the reality of it. And this is again why I'm actually kind of against dog movies, because anytime a dog movie comes out where it's a specific breed in that, boom, that breed is now being either bred more often or bought more often, and it's a big problem. Like, how many people have bought Akitas from watching Hachiko? There was a movie recently about a Belgian Malinois. Yeah, a Belgian
Yes,
Malinois.
that one too, John Wick.
Yeah, that one. Again, if you see John Wick and you think, great, I'm gonna get that dog, and you don't realize the commitment that comes with having that kind of dog. Again, we're gonna have all these difficult breeds in shelters, and after that, no one's gonna take them, because again, it takes a different caliber of person to take a rescue dog, full stop, in my opinion. You're inheriting all that dog's problems and committing your life to a different pathway at that point, which I greatly respect anyone on doing. But when it's a difficult breed as well as difficult problems, not many people are interested in it, and not many people want to do that kind of thing. And it's super tough to find that person to get into it. So again, I do think that it's too lucrative, and at the same time, people are breeding them faster than they can be rehomed. And so it's one of those things. It definitely still is a lucrative business, 100%. You even have people in Serbia and Romania breeding like security German shepherds, charging 20 to 30,000 euros for a puppy that's been security trained. How true it is, I have no idea. But again, these businesses do exist.
So knowing these things, knowing about the kennels and the rescues and things like how help me understand what the logic is, or what the motivation or drive is for you to be a breeder.
It's always been about preservation for me. That was the first part. Obviously seeing the positive impact that it has on people's lives to have a dog, and to be given that responsibility when you find the right people. Again, this is a really important thing, because I still stay in contact with all of my owners, and I message them at least once a month to see how things are. Some of them I'm actually quite close friends with, so we message each other daily. Other than that, I would say initially it was all about preservation. It was like, okay, these two dogs are genetically good for each other, and they've created something that will help further the breed and make it better, because that's all that you're trying to do, really. Like, a good example is like our Akita breeder. In dog shows, she always shows her older dogs, like the dogs that are between 5 to 7 years old, but those dogs always get beaten by dogs that she's bred that are only like 2, 3 years old. And again, that's really great thing to happen, because it shows that the next generation is better than the old generation, which is ultimately what you're trying to do anyways. But when you see that like a good family member has been added to that person's life, or even if they're living on their own, and then they now have like an extra sense of comfort or sense of like accomplishment from having that dog, for me that makes me feel ultimately great as a person too, because that they're going through, and it's so nice to see that person happy and excited to go on dog walks, and excited to train the dog and visit other places. And they normally didn't travel quite a lot, but because they have the dog now, they want to explore everything. And it's great to see what it can do for someone. Like me personally, I can't imagine living without a dog in any way, shape, or form. It just doesn't make sense to me. I've had to fly to England and different countries in Europe for dog training, and I've been away from the dogs for a month or so, maybe even longer for some clients, and it kills me, absolutely kills me, to the point where I'm offering free boarding just so I can have a dog near me. Like, that's how dog-ridden I am when it comes to that sort of thing. But when you see the effect that it has on people, and how they keep bettering their lives for the sake of the fact that they now have a dog, whether it might be because they take care of themselves better or they travel more, whatever. At that point, it makes you happy, and it gives you more of a reason to bless somebody again in that sense. But ultimately, if you ask what motivates me fully about breeding, I would say 100% it's always about keeping good genes to be further than to be bettered, and also about preserving the dog as it should be, because I don't want the breed to alter drastically in a bad way. I just want it to change in a good way. And again, through small increments, you see generations changing ever so slightly. 5%, I would say, you see some changes happening, but it's all good changes.
So typically, why do people come to you for these particular breeds? Like, what are their expectations? Would they try and acquire those dogs as an impulse buy, or are they fully aware and fully prepared mentally for these breeds? Like, how much do they know when they come to you?
So, I mean, when it comes to how much they know, I never really expect anybody to know anything, really. Like, realistically, even if it's your first time buying a difficult breed, I don't really put pressure on people to know anything about dog training. It's not like, I don't know, you were an expert driver before you learn how to drive. So why would I expect you to know anything about dogs or dog training when you get a dog, for example? Even for people that I meet sometimes and they say, I grew up with a German Shepherd, and my dad would make me walk the dog every day, and I grew up with dogs, but now I have a Shiba and I just feel like maybe I don't know anything. And this happens a lot, by the way, like people who come from a background where they've grown up with a dog, but they enter a spitz breed or a primitive breed, and it's now completely different. And I do see it from that standpoint, because even having a husky growing up, having an Akita was a different experience. Having a Shiba was a different experience. Having a Shikoku, completely different experience again. And so I understand that when it comes to these people, but it's a mixture when it comes to who comes to me and what they expect, because there's times where people come and they have the most unrealistic expectation, and it's a very short conversation because I just say it's not going to be possible. Unnecessary pressure on the dog. I can teach you how to manage said behavior, but in terms of fixing it or getting rid of it, not really going to happen. So a good example would be like, I had a client before, they got a Shiba and they said, oh, I just want it to be like my auntie's poodle. And it's like, so why didn't you get a poodle? I can't understand why you would want to go for a different breed and expect it to behave like a completely different breed. It was a bit worse because they suffered with that behavior for around, I think it was 4 or 5 years. So the dog was 5 years old, intact male, and their problem was that it wasn't friendly with males. And it's, ask any Shiba owner who has an intact male, unneutered, if they get on with males. The answer will most likely be no. They're same-sex aggressive, and it takes a lot of training and a lot of time for that dog to understand to be civil with other boys. As opposed to getting rid of that behavior completely. Like my male Akita, he's not throwing tea parties with every single boy that he meets, He's not friendly with all of them, but he's civil. He won't try to initiate a fight. And even if that Akita responds negatively towards him or growls or anything like that, his first instinct is to back up behind my knees and look at me. Because I've had him in that moment so many times where an aggressive dog has come up to us off the leash and come running at him, and I've had to pick him up and basically run away from the dog, or even hold the dog's collar and hold him on the other arm like this. And again, I've been bitten in that altercation, but he's seen how many times I've advocated for him to the point where now it doesn't make sense for him to engage in that. So again, it's really important to teach these things. But if you're talking about things that the breed's known for and you want it to be different, then there's no point in me even attempting that, because the likelihood of you having the time or the mental power to push through and try and reach that stage, a lot of owners won't have that, And at the same time, I do also get people who are really compliant, lovely people, who they have this dog and they've heard from a friend of a friend that I've trained. They're adult, and so they have a puppy, and they come to me and say, we want him to have a good foundation, help us with that. And so I'll train the dog from puppy up until a year and 5 months. A year and 8 months for some dogs that are a bit more stubborn in character. So that will happen too. But a lot of the times people understand that it's a breed that takes time and you need patience with this. But the problem is that I hate it when people see me as like, oh, I'm the person that's going to do most of the work and fix it for you. And like a lot of people enter this mindset where a trainer will do that for them, as if I have some magic wand that I go, psh, and it's done, whatever. But in terms of when people approach me, it's a mixture, really. It's a big mixture, because you get people that have ridiculously unexpected expectations. It's never going to happen in a million years. With some people, they have the time commitment to push through that kind of behavior, and they do end up getting to a stage where it's good. specifically in those areas, like I said, same-sex aggression, prey drive, all those sorts of things. They have the time and the energy to go ahead and try and fix that problem, or at least get it to a more manageable state. You get people that have understood what their dog is like, what the dog has character-wise, and they are willing to comply and have some leeway and negotiate from what their own expectations are to what the dog is able to do. And then you get people who have puppies, clean slate. There's nothing to do other than to just teach the dog as it is, and the dog ends up growing to a good balanced adult. Yeah, it's a big
But they
mixture.
choose these dogs because of what they look like, not because they have a job to do.
For the most part, yes. If you're talking about what motivation people have to buy this breed, the amount of times I have asked people why Shiba or why Akita or why Chow Chow, whatever, oh, it's a cute bear, it's a cute teddy bear, whatever. That is usually the answer. If that's not the answer, then it's always, oh, my friend had one, or I saw this movie, or I saw them on the internet, and it works from that. But again, it's all still visual aspect. It doesn't change much. But very rarely do I meet someone who has said like, oh, I got an Akita because I'm a bit antisocial and I don't really mind it if I don't talk to anyone or if I don't meet another dog owner, and I kind of like that. Very
Right.
rarely do you meet people like that, you know.
Yeah, don't
When you
give
do,
people
it's
ideas.
no, I'm not saying it, but no, but like they are suitable for that kind of thing. Like, for example, if you have an Akita and you're like a single person living on your own kind of thing, and you don't really like the idea of being too social or whatever, that dog isn't going to suffer a whole deal from just having you as a point of contact. Whereas, I don't know, maybe other dogs might feel the need to have a playmate or whatever, or someone else to be involved in their life. That dog
Right.
won't, most likely.
Right. So it's interesting though, because I remember watching both. I don't know if there are any more. Is it 2 or 3 versions of Hachiko, the film?
Yeah,
And the impression that I got about that particular breed, that was Akita.
yeah. Funny enough, they have in the beginning of that film, it's actually a Shiba puppy
It
that
is
they
a
use.
Shiba. Okay,
Yeah, it's a Shiba
I
they
knew
use, but
that.
they didn't use an Akita because it would just grow up too quickly during different takes. So yeah, they use a Shiba in the beginning, and then later on it's an Akita.
Right, okay. But the
Yeah,
personality of this particular breed came across as really gentle, a little bit energetic, but a companion dog. That's the
yeah,
impression that I got. It didn't leave the impression that it was a working dog, which it was originally.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know because of genetic drift and everything over time, they've been domesticated a bit more. But so you're saying those inherent traits that you just cannot breed out of them. What are those particular traits that people need to be aware of?
So again, from my viewpoint, first of all, same-sex aggression is 100% one of them. Um, I would, from my own personal experience, females are definitely worse with each other when it comes to fighting. At least when they get aggressive with each other, female to female is definitely, from my experience, a lot worse. I would say. When it comes to how they are and everything. But yeah, same-sex aggression is definitely a big one. Prey drive is another. Like if they track an animal and they lose the track of it, whatever, they'll just start tracking something else. It's not really something that they stop doing necessarily. Aloofness is another one. Again, with some genes, it's not the case. Like some breeding, it's not the case. Others, it is. I've been in dog shows, for example, where other males are literally trying to go for my dog in the ring, and my dog is just looking around like, okay, I don't know what to do. Help me, kind of thing.
Right.
And so for that reason, I always try and go last so that there's no one behind him, so that he doesn't feel uncomfortable and he just has to focus on looking forward, and that's it. Um, those are like the main two, I would say. The other three, again, like when it comes to like other dog breeds too, stubbornness is another one. Like, are you patient enough to handle that kind of breed? Because when I say about like these breeds specifically, every time you want to teach them to do something, it's almost like they're thinking about what's in it for me. Like, I know exactly what you want, but what do I get out of it? Because even there's times where a treat or food is not even enough. That's not enough for them. They look at it like, meh, you'll feed me later. You're not gonna make me starve out here. I'll get it later. I'm not gonna stand up and pour whatever you want. It's fine. Get it later. It's not really important. And they get into that mindset quite easily. And the amount of times where as a puppy, even like with my Akitas, I've tried to do some different type of training with them, and I had like a squeaking ball or a mice toy. I've even had like tennis balls that are made out of like real rabbit pelt from like these hunter shops and stuff like that, just to kind of kickstart some kind of like prey mentalities to be more engaged in training with me. Nope, not interested. It's boring now. I've done it once or twice. I really don't have much more interest in doing whatever it is that you want to do. And the same goes for walking and stuff like that too. Like you want them to heal for like a long period of time. Good luck. They're not really that kind of like type of breed. Like there's like one Instagram page that I follow where a guy has an American Akita healing great in like the middle of London, like a really, really like busy area. Turns out it was with an e-collar. So I was like, oh, it's not that impressive anymore. If it's a case where you're abusing your dog and zapping your dog into obedience, then for me, it has no talent or like value in it in any way, shape, or form. If you're going to post videos like that with a dog that's not known to be obedient, you're just putting the dog through unnecessary pain. There's no point. I can grab a leash and walk with a loose leash pretty nicely in heel in London with two Akitas. I could even do it with all 6 of my dogs, and I don't need an e-collar for that. It's not that impressive, but yeah, you see a lot of that going on these days. But yeah, those are the main 3 I would say in terms of like genetic characteristic that's in this dog: same-sex aggression, prey drive, and then stubbornness. 100%.
Okay. Oh, I didn't think that stubbornness was because dogs don't have morals and values the same way that humans do. So I didn't think that. So maybe that's just a way for humans to identify a certain characteristic.
But maybe, yeah. I mean, for me, it's the best way to describe it. That I can't think of anything else to say other than, oh, they're just stubborn and that's it. Because I even remember at one point, like my male Akita was like 6 months old, and he would do this thing where he would just sit and just shut off. Like you would look at his eyes, and he's in spirit, he's completely somewhere else. And I sent a video to my breeder saying like, did I psychologically harm him in some way? Did I do something wrong outside? Is it the fact that he's overwhelmed? Like, because again, don't forget, when a dog moves country, it's actually kind of a bit worrying for them too, because they're not hearing the same sounds from people talking the way they do in other places too. And I just thought that the whole move was a lot for him, really. And my breeder just said, just keep walking, don't be silly. Like, he's just being stubborn. Just keep walking and he will come. And eventually I started doing that a bit more and like feeling less sorry for him. And then he realized, oh, I'm no longer doing this game where I stop and feed him or whatever. I'm just walking. So he was like, okay, I guess that game is over. And he never did it again. 3 times it took me to get him out of that mentality, and now he just doesn't do it anymore.
Okay, that's interesting, because I feel like I've had similar experience with Duna. Who's a Spanish greyhound, and I can say her name even now. She's on the sofa. Her ears don't even perk up. It's like I'm an alien speaking a different language altogether. But she can be fast asleep on my bed, and there can be a rustle in a bush outside, and she's like, bing, it's weird. But also I can look at her, and she can be like, there's like nothing there, it's like nothing behind
100%.
those eyes. It's bizarre. But again, going for a walk near an open field, she is just constantly scanning the horizon.
100%.
It's really fascinating. Yeah. Really, really fascinating that you have a similar experience, but with a different breed.
Yeah.
Mad. Anyways, back to breeding. So I wanted to find out from you. So I've heard people kind of defend their position as breeders, saying, oh, I'm a responsible breeder. And I've had other people say, oh, I'm an ethical breeder. Is there much of a difference between the two? And to you, what do those things mean?
I mean, they're both like almost the same word, just said differently, in my opinion. Like responsible, ethical, whatever you want to put it. For me, there's a few characteristics that defines you as whether you are or not. The first one is, if it comes be that no one buys these dogs from you, or no one steps up and says, I'd like a dog, can you actually keep all of them? And I don't mean from like a standpoint where it's like ethically, should you, whatever. Are you financially in a position to take care of these dogs? If one of them gets sick the way that mine wanted, can you spare the time to be able to do that? Because it was so crazy, because when we had the litter, my wife quit her job 2 weeks before, just coincidentally. It wasn't even like it was, oh, I'll quit my job because the dog's pregnant. She was unhappy and she quit, and that's it. So, and at that point too, I'd also quit my job like 2 months before that. So it was almost like the universe, whatever you want to call it, God, whatever you believe in. It was just perfect timing the way that it happened. But again, do you have the time to take care of those dogs? 3, will you responsibly train those dogs to a good state so that people receive a pretty manageable dog? Because the thing is, I've had clients that have gotten a dog, a puppy, and it's already displaying aggression that I haven't seen in years, you know, and it's only 2-3 months old. And it's like, that's really traumatizing for a couple that already have a dog that's actually really well behaved and they want to add another because they want the dog to have a friend, which again, I'm not against the idea in any way. I mean, I live in a multiple dog household. It'd be really ironic if I was, but uh, yeah, can you train those dogs to get to a manageable state so that when people pick these dogs up, they're actually set for a long time, and the only thing that they need is maybe help with teenage phase because they rebel a little bit, or in females' case, when they go into season and they get a bit moody because they're not feeling so good, a bit of additional support from that point onwards, and then after that, you haven't got to worry about anything at all. Are you able to do that? Because some people say, oh, it's not really up to the breeder to train that dog, but I disagree completely. You know, you've got no right giving a life to someone that doesn't already know how to live its life in that way. For me, it's completely wrong to do that. You should train your dogs to a good state, to heal, to be social with other dogs and with other people. Dogs is not necessarily like a really higher priority, but people 100%. Children definitely. Oh my God, the amount of socialization that I did with people's kids was absolutely insane with the puppies, and I really wanted them to be good with children. Luckily, they are. But also, when it comes to like the more like really, really important points about this, I would also say, are you in a position to take that dog back should things go wrong for the owner? Because I've spoken to breeders about dogs that they've sold to people, and I've said, you know, this is happening to that person, and they're really struggling, whether it might be financially or mentally or whatever. And the right thing to do in that moment would have been to have stepped in and said, hey, I know you're going through quite a lot, and just saying, if you need a break from the dog, you can let it live with me until you're ready to come pick it up. Sort yourself out, and then after that, say to me, okay, I'm ready now, and that's it. You know, with our puppies, we have secondary like contact information on all of them, and even though I live in the Lithuania now, I still have my UK SIM active. For God forbid that I get a call from a vet saying that it's been surrendered or it's escaped and now we have it, whatever. And people might think that I'm exaggerating, but I would genuinely will take a Ryanair flight to the UK to pick up the dog that I've bred and bring it back here. I don't care how much it costs. I don't care what process I need to go through, whatever. I will happily do it for all 7 of them if it was a case where they had to come back to me. I do believe that if you do like your research with people who are buying them correctly, it's more likely that you won't have to get into that situation. And it's nothing that I would, wish for someone to be in that position. But again, if anyone from that litter called me and said, hey, I need to return this dog for what, I don't even care what the reason is, even if it's just, oh, I don't want it anymore, fine, bring it back. Can you do that is a really important question. But also, when it comes to, again, it's all about financials again, but if that dog had a genetic problem, for example, or a disease or something like that that was caused from the breeding, not because of the owner's problem necessarily, can you pay for that? Because that is your responsibility. It is something that you've caused. Because, say, for example, my dogs had allergenesis imperfecta and the puppies had brittle bones disease, like I told you about before, as a result of my breeding. I am then liable, in my opinion, for that dog's treatment. Whatever needs to happen for that dog, I need to pay for it, and I need to be responsible for that. Can you do that? Would you do that? Because again, if someone said that to you and you end up having to pay a lot of money to treat that dog, a lot of people might, stick their nose up and say, actually, no, I'm not doing that. It's your dog now. It's not mine. I sold it to you. It's your responsibility. But for me, I would never feel the need to back up in that moment and say something else. I would always be happy to compensate the owner for whatever it is that I've caused. Because ultimately, if it's a genetic disease that's passed on from the parents, whatever, it is your fault. You bred these 2 dogs. You brought them into the world. And you've sold someone an unhealthy puppy. And so for me, that would be the main characteristics of someone who's an ethical/responsible dog breeder. Yeah, 100%.
I recently learned that apparently people have this impression that purebred dogs are a standard. And I've learned that that's not the case. So for people listening who only know purebred as a selling point, what does purebred actually mean? And what does it not mean?
So for me, the definition has always been that the mother and the father of the litter are both the same breed. That's what it means for me. Again, we're in a world where everything can mean anything. So whether that definition is different to you, then great. But for me, that's the case. But again, people have I don't know, Cavapoos, for example, that they breed with another Cavapoo. So Cavalier Charles Spaniel crossed with Poodle, they breed it with another dog that's been crossed with the same thing, and then they go, it's a purebred Cavapoo. It's not. There's no such thing as a purebred Cavapoo because, again, this dog breed is not a recognized breed. And the thing is, too, I'm actually very suspicious of people who breed these dogs because of the fact that I've heard so many people that own like Cavapoos, for example, who say, oh, the mother was a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel and the father was a poodle and they both won things at crafts. And it's like, how? Because I've been to crafts once with my dogs to compete, and I know the community that exists in that kind of environment. And I don't think anyone in a million years would be like, okay, you know what? If this breeding thing doesn't go to plan and I can't really recuperate the money that I've put into my breeding program or whatever, I'll just do this crossbreeding thing and that'll pay whatever. And that's, I don't know anyone who would actually be open to doing that, you know, whether it happens in secret or whether people are exaggerating about their dogs just to get them to breed and make money, whatever it might be. But I don't think that that's the case, you know, like, and again, if you have pedigree paperwork, that's another great thing to have too. And like the funny part is, like in the UK for Kennel Club, you need to show 5 generations of your dog to have it have pedigree papers, and you need to have both parents registered to Kennel Club in order for the puppies to be registered too. For Akitas, you have the Akiho Hozonkai, which is like the federation for Akita specifically, like the database that they enter and everything. It's the Akita specific database. Both of my dogs are Akiho registered, and I have 15 generations shown on the database, not 5. So I have even longer proof that my dogs are purebred. So that's what it means for me, personally. Mother and father are both the same breed, and not only that, you can show a really long lineage of that dog being bred by the same breed continuously.
Right. But in terms of its health, that's not part of the equation, right?
Depends, because on some databases it will show that it's had an eye test and a hip test and an allergenesis imperfecta, whether it's a carrier of that gene or affected by that gene, whatever. Some places you will see it, but generally speaking, no. I mean, in Kennel Club, UK Kennel Club, it will say that it's health tested, but it doesn't show what health test. So you could get the dog's eye tested, for example, but it's got bad knees and bad hips, and you won't know that from looking at
Exactly.
it or
People
whatever.
don't know that.
And a lot of breeders will actually use the Australian system for health testing. And with the Australian system, you can keep a lot of documents classified and people don't have access to that information. Whereas if you use like a British health testing center, whatever, if you dug through enough, you could find out the results of any dog that's been tested. Because it gets sent automatically. Whether you like the result or not, it doesn't matter. It gets sent off because you now entered your dog to be scrutinized from that point onwards. So you have no choice in the matter. So, say for example, you're like a big breeder who has like a lot of awards and everything, but you've entered your dog to be health tested, and turns out it's got bad hips. Well, you know, bad luck. And now everyone knows that your dog has bad hips. But if you use the Australian system, no one will ever know because it's under lock and key.
So where would they have to declare this in the UK? Is that through the Kennel Club?
Yeah, so on Kennel Club registries, if you search up the dog's registered name, it will just say health tested. If it's been health tested for 1 or 5 things, it will just say that it's been health tested, but it doesn't show what health tests specifically, and it won't show you the result either.
Okay, yeah, this is what I recently learned, because I was under the impression that pedigree meant, you know, the best of the best of the best, but I didn't realize that actually is just lineage. You know, you can
That term is so overused, and like again, I see people who have like backyard breedings, no health testing, no nothing, not even like a KC paper to say my dog's registered, and they'll put in the caption saying champion bloodline. It's like, what does that mean exactly? You know, because if you're talking about how the dog is like loosely related to this dog in Romania who's won 2 awards, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything, you know, like you can't sell it to that person being like, oh, it's a champion bloodline, therefore I'm charging 2,000 more than the other person. Like, no, it doesn't mean anything, you know. My dog's parents, my female Akita, her parents have won best dog of Poland, best dog of Sweden, best dog of Finland. I can go on and name all these things, and they've even won best couple in like several dog shows. And he's come second in the World Dog Show, which is a really, really big achievement because everyone from all over the world competes in that. But again, I have never advertised once saying champion bloodline, even though I would actually have some right to say it because of the accreditations and awards that the parents have won. I could easily say that, but I don't because it doesn't mean anything. And people often use that term as a reason to justify more expensive price. And
Yeah.
for me, it's a big red flag when buying a dog when people say, if you ask them what health tests have been done, again, you even see this on social media. Like every time I see a litter on social media, I will always ask what health testing has been done to justify this litter. And people will say, oh, it's been to the vets and it's all good. And it's like a health check at the vets doesn't mean anything, you know? And again, this is something that isn't spoken often about enough. So many people that I've known, clients that I've trained, have said, oh, my vet has told me I should breed him. Why? Since when has your vet been like the regulating authority on whether the dog should be bred or not, you know? And it does make me think if it's part of something bigger where they want more dogs in the world so they have more clients in the future or something else relating to it in any way. But yeah, it's a overused term. And I even think that nowadays the term pedigrees is starting to lose its value too, because now we're switching from Kennel Club assured breeders list to a different system in the UK, which means that anyone can just register anywhere, anytime, and it doesn't matter if you're Kennel Club approved or not. You can just upload your litter and take money, and that's it. You know, so we're heading into a more scarier state, in my opinion.
Oh, 100%. Out of curiosity, when you breed your dogs, what characteristics do you look for? What is it that you look for in the male and the female for breeding?
For me, like, it's 3 points. The first one is temperament. I know a lot of people will say that body of the dog or the body composition, muscle tone, things like that is much more important. But I've seen many stunning Akitas, like looks wise, that are aggressive as hell, and you can't even approach them. You can't even look at them because they just start growling at you. And for me, that's not good. I spend more time at home than I do in dog shows, and for me, home life is very important. You know, really, 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 I can't express to you enough how the way that they are at home, the way that they are with me as a human, the way they are with my family, with my nieces, my nephews, children, newborns, whatever it might be, the way they are with other dogs and how they are socially. That's a lot more important than having like A-grade hips, for example. You know, I'm not saying that body composition isn't important, but for me, temperament just means everything. If you're not comfortable with them at home and you're annoyed at a particular character trait, that's gonna haunt you for the rest of your life. Unless you're happy with that, it's just not gonna.
It's not worth it.
It's not gonna be good for you. You know, you're not gonna have the experience that you want. You know, a lot of people talk about like having a dog as if it's like a chore or something like that, and I really hate that because like, why have it if you're not enjoying it? For me, it doesn't make any sense. When I had my Shiba initially, she was so protective of the house. But again, like typical of the genetic makeup of that dog, where they just used to surround certain areas to make sure things were okay. And if they saw anything out of the ordinary in any way, they would alert the hunter to come and finish off the animal, whatever. Chase small game. So when a bird would land in our house in Brighton to the windowsill, she would lose her mind. If someone was near the gate, she would at least bark once or twice. It annoyed me to some extent because my Akitas were never like that, you know?
Sorry,
you're right
my
there.
plant just bloomed. Yeah, like, what's it called? You know, that really scared me. Sorry, go
Yeah, but I was
ahead.
saying, like, my Akitas were never like that. And again, like, in general, Akitas aren't really the breed that bark at everything. They only bark when there is a real reason to bark. When you're actually in danger, when there's actually something to be alerted about, that's when they'll bark, you know? We had one time where someone got the wrong address and knocked at our door at 4 a.m. And my male Akita was like growling and barking. But it wasn't even like a growl. It was like a low, like, get out of my house kind of thing, you know? Because he just never saw that before, expected it, and he was woken up too. So obviously a bit of fear involved in that. My Shiba didn't do anything in that moment. She was kind of like a coward in the back, like, don't hurt me kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then once the person left, she went back to normal. But in general, my Shiba would just kind of patrol the house and just kind of bark at things happening, a bird landing on the windowsill, or I don't know, the school kids coming out, or whatever it might be, like just in general. And it annoyed me for a bit, but then I realized she's only doing the thing that she was bred to do. There's nothing that I can do to change it in any way. And so I've got to either accept it or just be annoyed forever. And I chose to obviously accept it and to learn to live with it. And now it doesn't bother me in the slightest. And I'm really glad that I went through that, because it gave me another tier of patience when it comes to dealing with her. Body characteristics, I'm always looking for good angulation in the back of the dog's body, because it's a really big problem where dogs either have over-angulated back legs, or even worse, they have really straight legs. And so they end up walking, I call it TikToking, when they just kind of walk like stick figures, almost. And they have no hip support when they walk. And again, when you see dogs running in dog shows, their gait is so off when it's completely straight. And that natural flow of the body to where it's supposed to just kind of be fluid as one motion. I know that realistically there's 4 legs moving in that equation, but it should be fluid,
Yeah.
It should almost be as if there's just 2 legs doing this rather than individual,
Yeah.
A bit more fluidity is what I'm looking for when it comes to the body and things like that. Chest-wise, you're looking for a good H frame, as I call it in Shibas, like the H shape. You're looking for that frame. With the head, you're looking for small ears. You don't want big, bat, flappy ears. Ears that flop when they are on the run. You don't really want that usually. And when it comes to lips and expression, you want tight lips, like nothing sagging around the muscle, like the muzzle area. And you're looking for a good expression. Again, like people can look this up and whatever they want to. When I say expression, it kind of, the dog looks like it's smiling almost, And the better it looks, almost like the better it's considered to have that expression. With Akitas, it's very different. But I'm looking for good muscle tone, good body angulation, like I talked about before. There's 3 or 4 different tails that are acceptable in Shibas. There's one that's super rare called the saber tail, where it just like kind of dips up in like a sort of almost C crescent kind of shape. Very few dogs have this, and it's really great if a dog does have that. It's really, really desirable. With Akitas, they're supposed to have like a double curl, but in Shibas, if you have a double curl tail, it's not as good. They're just looking for one slight curl up on the body, and that's it. That's ultimately what you're looking for. And then with colors and everything, like the white parts of a Shiba is called urajiro. So you're looking for nice markings. It can't be too high up on the body or too low down either. You're looking for good markings and good urajiro, so to speak. It almost should be like a gradient, if that makes sense. You kind of see the color fading towards the top of the dog a bit more. And then it kind of goes back to its natural color. So red ones, they have like white legs and white paws, but you can see the whiteness fades as it goes up. And you're looking for that, With red Akitas, it's normal for them to have a half white face at the bottom and then red at the top. But then when Shibas have a full white face at a young age, it's considered bad. They call it clown face. But a lot of old Shibas have clown faces, and it's normal to have it with a senior Shiba. But if it's a young one that's going through that, it's not so good.
Yeah. So who decides that these things are bad? As in, like, is this just a marketing thing?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. It's not about desirability or like the looks of the dog in any way, shape, or form. So, funny enough, like all these breeds have gone through a time where they went almost extinct entirely. I mean, other breeds have done too, but for the Japanese people, this is like a really, really big deal in terms of like breed preservation and everything. There actually used to be, I think, 3 or 4 different types of Shiba before, but they came really close to being extinct, so they just combined all of them. And from the combination of breeding all of them came the 4 colors that we have now: white, sesame, black and tan, red. Whites you're not actually allowed to show, and it's very looked down upon if you breed them, because it's considered that the urajiro has extended all over the body. Funny enough, with Akitas, a white Akita is perfectly acceptable, provided that it's got good muscle tone, good body shape, other acceptable features, and so on. But the NIPO group, which is in charge of like the Shiba standards, they're the ones who decided what markings are acceptable, what markings are not. And ultimately they've put these rules because of pigmentation, really. If the white of the dog is too overextending, it ideally means weaker pigmentation. And so only certain markings are acceptable to be bred, at least for this
Okay.
standpoint. So you can have a dog that has unacceptable markings, but it's a really good pet dog. And provided that you don't breed that dog, it's still considered okay to have that dog. No one's going to say anything about that. But with regards to conformation and eligibility to be bred, yes, there is. Even I agree. I would say, yeah, in terms of like maintaining healthy skin pigment and good coat length, things like that, you should watch out for the markings of a dog, or the type of coat that it has. Like red Akitas, for example, they have a big problem where the coat is too short, and it's so common to have a short-haired Akita. I look at my female Akita, my male Akita, and my female looks a little bit bigger, I would say. But when she sheds her coat, she looks the same, if anything, smaller than my male. You know.
Right.
But when my male is in full coat, I can't really tell when he's in full coat versus when he's lost his coat, because there isn't really much difference in looks. And so when it comes to like healthy skin pigmentation and good coat genetics, so to speak, I definitely think that there should be like a regulation authority saying that, oh, this is good and this is bad, because they have seen what it does to breed the opposite way and to breed the way they're doing it now. So it's
Yeah.
definitely good. But I can see why people would think that it's like a marketing thing and they would want certain looks because it's more desirable to sell more, whatever. But it's definitely not about that. Definitely people aren't doing it because of that either. You won't find people that are selling white ones just because it looks better or whatever. Not at all.
Yeah. Okay. Going back to what you said earlier about you believe that it is the breeder's responsibility to train the dog before the dog goes to the family. How old are your Akitas and Shibas before they leave their litter mates and their mum?
Depends on the situation. So when we had the litter, the first one left at 11 weeks old, I believe. So he had his first jab and he was weaned off his mom completely. And the guy was really experienced too. He was a really good dog walker before. He had a lot of experience with chow chows and like other spitz breeds. And he actually wanted a chow chow, but when he saw the litter, he got persuaded to getting an Akita instead. And even now he says, I can't imagine myself with any other dog. But it depends on the person, and also depends on the dog, because like I said before, we had one in particular, a male, who was a bit aggressive. He liked to start fights, and he would also like to cause fights between two dogs and then just back away as if he didn't do anything. So he was a
These
bit
are
of an
puppies, yeah?
instigator. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did actually try and figure out what I did wrong with him to cultivate that kind of energy, because none of them had that issue, just him. And the thing is too, he had this really like mean looking like bear kind of face. Like he had that face that was like, I'm big and I'm mean and like, don't mess with me kind of. He had that look about him. And so everyone who met him was like, oh, he looks like a killer. He looks like this. He looks like that. I really want him because of that. And even when I remember one person in particular met him, he was a bit rough with him and he growled and he was like, oh, I kind of like that, because imagine like no one would ever do anything to me if I had a dog like this. And immediately I thought, what are you doing with your life that people would try and do something to you? Because we lived in Brighton. Like it's not like, and people have guns and people break into people's houses, whatever. Like, don't get me wrong, you have some interesting characters in Brighton, but not to the extent where you need like a killer Akita
A
that's going to
protection, a
protect you.
self-protection. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not needed. And so I had maybe 2 or 3 people like that, that came to see him, and I thought I'm gonna have to keep him because I don't trust anyone with him. And on top of that, it was training wise, he needed so much development to actually get to a stage where I could even trust him with anyone, in my opinion, at least, anyways. And I thought to myself, I'm gonna keep him most likely. And at the time, I was even filling out transport paperwork for my dogs to be transported to Lithuania. And I thought I will probably add his name just in case, because I don't think that I'm gonna sell him to anyone.
Yeah.
He reached around 6 or 7 months old, and then he just became the sweetest like boy ever. And he was so gentle, and he had no objections with anything. And he was even great with his own father, and that was like a big deal, because everyone always said like, don't have father and son together in the same house, don't have them close to one another. But even when it comes like things like dominant behavior, like marking on trees and stuff like that, the dog was called Katashi, and his father was called Ichi. Katashi would never pee on the same tree that Ichi would pee on. He would go further and pee on a different one. He would fully respect the fact that you've marked this tree and I'm going to go and find my own tree. It's okay. No problem.
Yeah.
he wouldn't even like look at him during feeding or anything like that, because in his mind he thought, if I look at you when you're eating, you're probably going to get aggressive with me, so I'm just going to mind my own business and eat here, and that's it, you know. And he was great, and he was so respectful. And then obviously I decided to keep him at that point, because I was thinking he's good now, and not only that, but he perfectly accepts everyone in the house too, so he's great. I will keep him. But then my wife got a message from someone saying that they used to have an American Akita, and they're just looking for a well-bred Japanese Akita. They'd never seen one before. Now they're seeing one and losing their mind and everything. I actually wanted to reject them so harsh. Like I really wanted to find an excuse to not accept these people. And I thought, he was really standoffish with everyone that came into the house before, so maybe he'll do the same thing again, and hopefully it won't happen. That was my mindset, because I really wanted to keep him. And he just decided to be really friendly with them, and he was like jumping over them, and he was such a big puppy too. And I thought maybe that energy would make them not want him. And they were super understanding, ideal owners, great people, and they said, yeah, we'd love to take him. And they took him. So 11 weeks was the youngest that the first
11
one left
weeks
at.
was the earliest that they've left.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So first vaccination, followed by the fact that he was a really experienced owner. Again, he had a training PDF of all the like specific time marks of when you would need different training too, and he followed everything to the letter, and he was great.
Amazing.
Still is great.
And so what type of socialization would you have done by that point?
So at that point, they would have been through town, like Brighton town, like through the lanes and stuff like that. Any construction site I would find, I would actually eat my lunch near any construction site that I would find. A lot of road works happen in Brighton anyway, so it's not hard to find those sorts of things. I would sit at Preston Park quite a lot too during that time, just so they could see dogs walk past and people walking past. And there would always be a couple with a child wanting to meet the puppy or pick the puppy up or whatever, and I would always allow it to happen too. Hand sanitizer first, wash your hands, pick up the puppy, put it down. Great. Next one. And that would kind of be the process. A lot of shops in the North Lanes have held my dogs and worked with one puppy in one hand and working with the other hand, whatever. Every cafe you could possibly imagine. I've been in and sat in with them, just so they could experience seeing life, and like, pots and pans hitting the ground, and I don't know, a coffee cup being broken, whatever, like every possible sound you could imagine they've been exposed to. And that's the type of social that's really important. Dog to dog is, in my opinion, less important, because you can teach a dog to be social. And the thing is too, a lot of dog owners, they have friends that have dogs, and so they'll meet in little congregations, and that dog will have a circle of friends that it already knows. And it's not hard to teach a dog to just walk past another dog and not care about it. That stuff is easy. But when it comes to life and like being exposed to certain settings, certain environments, in my opinion, it's really tough to do once you already had a dog that's experienced like the process of being delivered somewhere else or being driven somewhere else, for example. It's tough for a dog to get used to that unless they have the foundation set already in the beginning,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, some contentious questions are ahead. I'm really curious about this, and so I would love your thoughts on it. So, firstly, some people would say that breeders are playing God. How do you personally see the ethics of deciding which dogs breed and how?
There is a lot of that happening. It's definitely a question that's close to my heart, because of the fact that there's a lot of breeders who play an active part in how dogs are being judged in dog shows, and they'll often use their own dogs as examples when it comes to these things. So a judge will understand that that dog bred by that specific person is the right thing to look for, and they've now changed the standard of that dog, as a result of it. And so now it's become a case where any dog that doesn't look like that dog's breed, that kennel is breeding, is now considered bad, which is not the
Right.
case, and that in itself, in my opinion, is playing God, because you have now changed the standard based off of what you do personally. And you're now setting the standard to the rest of the world that unless it comes from my breeding, it can't be right, because I'm the only one who breeds them right or whatever, And there is a lot of that going on for all breeds everywhere, not just my breed specifically. But a lot of gatekeeping going on too when it comes to these breeds. And again, like a lot of breeders I've heard, for example, some breeders have contractual terms where you'll buy a stud for your kennel and you'll pay an obscene amount of money. But even then, they'll say you can only breed with dogs that we approve of. You have no freedom to breed this dog with your own will. And it's like, if I'm paying a lot of money for this dog, why am I not allowed to do whatever I want with it? Why do I need this tie or this term attached to what I'm doing? Because even with like the dogs that I have bought, like, yeah, the breeder will say to me, I would like it if you consulted me about the breedings that you do with the dog that you buy from me. But at the end of the day, I don't owe them that. I'm just doing it because I'm conscious about their image and conscious about the fact that this dog is now being represented as that from that kennel. So I'm always conscious about that. But at the end of the day, I still have freedom to do whatever I want to do because it's now my dog. But again, people put these terms, and again, it's so hard to break free from that link because they'll breed that dog with the intention of having control of the market, not so that something better can come out of it, whatever. And so, yeah, there is a lot of that going on 100%. And again, like I said before, a lot of people that are like high in the regard of breeding and have won a lot of awards and things like that, they'll be consulted as to what's right and what's wrong about the breed and to teach people further down the line. And they'll use that as an opportunity to not only get better education for these judges that are up and coming people or whatever, but also as a means to further their breeding, because they'll say, look at my dog, this is what you're looking at. If it's not like this, then it's wrong. That's it.
Yeah.
Nothing more to it other than that,
Okay, so there isn't like a commonly agreed line in the breeding world. It's very individual. People do what they want.
It would like to be presented that it is, but in my opinion, there is not much of it going on, at least
no
anyway.
Pedigree either.
No, I don't think so, because the amount of times that I have seen physically a better looking dog next to, I don't know, like a breeder that's really well known in the community, and that dog has not even been commended or not even like looked at properly in any way, and the judge is awarding purely based off the fact that the other breeder has trained them and they're looking for their breeding, not for an objective perspective,
Mm-hmm. Okay. How much do you personally think about the welfare of the bitches before you breed them?
100%, I would say, because at the end of the day, the last thing that I would want is for a difficult breeding to happen in terms of giving birth. That's the last thing that I want, is for the dog to suffer during the time of birth, And again, I think that if I ever had a situation where my dog went into complications and had a C-section, I don't really care if it was the first or the second or the third, I would end breeding that dog, because at that point I know that it's likely another complication could happen. At that point, I would put my motivation for preservation completely aside and focus on the welfare of the dog. There's even a lot of arguments of people saying that, if you have a vet check, you can go for a fourth mating. I think that's a bit wrong personally, because vets' opinions are so subjective that one vet might say, yeah, you're good to go, and actually it could be the end of my dog's life. My breeder is really a good example of this too. Like every third mating she's had, she's neutered her bitches, and they've been out of action after that. They live a happy retired life, and that's it. A lot of breeders, they rehome their retired dogs because they have no use to them anymore. But again, going back to the old question of what makes a good breeder, I would also say look to how many veteran dogs they have, because it's a bit of a red flag in my opinion if you have all these dogs and all of them are just young and they're still trying to give you something. If you don't have that old 15-year-old dog that's fading away in the corner, I don't think that actually you're that great of a person in terms of breeding and things like that. Like my Akita breeder, who also breeds Shikokus, and she's recently gotten into Hokkaido, which is another great Japanese breed. She has over 40 dogs. She has like all these acres of land, and she has like all these llamas and everything. No llamas, sorry, alpacas in her house. And her house is just one big amazing zoo in my opinion. But the amount of dogs that you see in photographs that are just old and they're like proper old, and it just makes her heart warm because she's had them until the day they die,
And I suppose she's bred all of them.
Pretty much, yeah. A lot of them, so she ended up adopting a lot of them during the Ukraine invasion. So she had a lot of blind old Akitas being in the rescue shelters, and she adopted quite a few of them as a result. And even to this day, she'll find an excuse to rescue a dog. She always has some sort of rescue or some sort of disabled dog living in
Right.
her house. So it's great to see that part of her too. But yeah, 100%. I care. It's something that's really, really deep in my heart. And if it's a case where it could end my dog's life, I would never want to do it or even harm in any way. Even if the dog's in pain, I won't do it. Like my Shiba lived there in January. If she suffers in any way, that's it. I'm not going to do it again.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
Okay. I'm interested to know how they are being bred. As in like physically, do they physically get bred, or is it through IVF, or like what is the situation? Because I recently
You
read. Mhm.
sorry, what were you going to say?
I recently read a book that was written, I think, in the 80s, and it was about dog training. And specifically, they were writing about breeding. And they were saying, once you found a stud for your bitch, take your bitch there and see if she's interested in the stud. If not, take her back home and into her comfortable environment and have the stud come to her. I listened to that and I thought to myself, that doesn't happen anymore. The bitch doesn't have a say at all anymore. So that really upset me actually, because I realized that okay, that standard has dropped to such a degree that the dog can't decide at all what is suitable for her.
100%. I do think that with regards to like how they're being bred, things have become a bit different in the sense to like, I mean, you can even find online videos where like they're forcing the mating to happen, you know?
I've
Um,
seen, yeah.
Similar to humans, the male doesn't experience much pain in this process. It's mainly painful for the female. And so obviously that's a bit sad, but I have never put my dogs in a situation where they're um, invited into that sort of altercation with the idea that, oh, you have to breed kind of thing. Oftentimes, when a female is in season, you will often see the female almost try to like create this pre-mating ritual where like they kind of almost annoy them into doing it, or they keep persisting, like, come on. I'm ready, you're ready, let's go, kind of thing. You do see that quite a lot. Like my Shikoku, for example, she loves my male Akita, and she's ridiculously flirtatious with him in general. She'll lick his face and get really excited when he comes through the door and whatnot. But when she's in season, he'll be sleeping on the sofa and she'll literally ram him with her butt, hoping that he gets a whiff of whatever is going on
Mm-hmm.
between her legs, obviously. Because they're different breeds, I keep them separate throughout the time. And I always put a cover around the penis of the dog to make sure nothing will happen when it's a crossbreed situation. So if a different breed is in season and my male is around, I will cover him and I'll also put a diaper on the dog when it's indoors. And then when it's outside, I'll take it off so they can clean themselves up and everything. Because the males, they go crazy when the blood drips on the floor and stuff like that, or the discharge comes out. It becomes a bit difficult to clean too. So diapering them in that moment is better. But I still do agree with the old school method of like see if they get on and like each other, as opposed to forcing it to happen. Because a lot of breeders travel to other breeders to meet with a stud and hope to get that done, and sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes the male is fully in season right at the end where they're most potent. A male will try to have a sniff and she'll just snap and get aggressive. Okay, so you're not into him. Cool, no problem. I have the same view as if I had a daughter and a guy was being a bit too touchy-feely with her. I would say, hey, stop. She doesn't want to, so it's not going to
Absolutely.
happen.
But
You know?
surely you've seen people mating with dogs using forceful methods. What
Yeah,
happens in those
yeah.
moments? Why is that
I mean,
normalized?
the thing is that there's nothing to gain out of it other than one time like value, if that makes sense, because you're not going to breed that dog again once that happens. If you force a mating to happen, you have now traumatized that dog. That dog is also in pain now because of what's happened, not just physically, but emotionally. And again, people don't understand this as much, or they don't want to talk about it as much, whatever the situation is. But when you put a dog through that, anytime it's in season, it's just going to get traumatized all over again, and it's going to seek out more protection, more shelter. And any dog that comes near it instantly gets aggressive as a result of it. Because even if a female wanted to have a sniff because it feels off or it smells different, that dog is most likely going to hurt that dog in a really, really bad way, because the last time she was in season, she got raped. And that's the reality of it. And people don't look at it from the same perspective. But for me, it has no difference as opposed to my views on like when women get raped in general. Like still think that it's wrong, and I think that it's wrong for dogs too. It's no different, just because they can't communicate the way that we do as humans together. The law shouldn't be any different with regards to things like this. But again, so important to talk about and educate people on these things. And again, which is why I prefer the Lithuanian system to breeding, because they talk to you about this stuff specifically too. And again, that's a really big part of the modules that you go through. But it's not so much in the UK. And it doesn't happen often enough that we sit down and we talk about these conversations as much when it comes to how they're being bred, as you say.
Yeah, because it seems so normalized. I was doing research for this episode and I found a video on YouTube, and I was just typing in breeding basics 101, and they were breeding Frenchies on a table in the middle of like an exhibition center, music blaring in the background. Basically, there's a woman with a glove, the dog got a whiff of the bitch, got aroused. She then used her own hands to try and, extract the sperm in a little cup, then took a needle and pulled out the sperm, and then someone else held the dog's legs up, the female.
Yeah, there you go. Bish bash bosh, your dog's pregnant now. That's it,
That's just, I was like, how, this should be illegal. This should be illegal. How is this even acceptable on any level?
You'll definitely be on the wrong side of the law if that happened here. Yeah, 100%. And the other thing is too is that like breeding is not like, again, I don't know if it's just the UK or if other countries are experiencing the same thing too, but I've seen a lot of it in the UK. Breeding is becoming more and more and seen more and more as like this thing that you could just do to make money quick, and you can do from home, very low effort. Bish bash bosh, like I said before, pregnant dog, that's it. I'll feed it some cheap whatever from Lidl until people pick it up, and then that's it. You can go home with it, and then that's how you get all these dogs that have so many issues, but the amount of issues that people have that are just caused from bad breeding as opposed to the owners being at fault, so high. And it's so harsh to tell people, no matter what you did for this dog's upbringing, you couldn't have changed it. It's just genetics. It's just bad genes, bad raising environment. The breeder didn't do a good job raising him, and that's it.
Mad. I would love to go into that with you, but before I do that, I wanted to talk about fertility clinics, because my impression of a fertility clinic for a human is, you go there because you're having some challenges and you need some help. But I can't imagine that any dog's ever going to go knock on a door and say, "Excuse me, I'm trying to conceive. Can you help me, please?" I just think it's really ridiculous. It sounds so clinical. It sounds so like, we're doctors, we're here to help you. It's so dark.
The thing is that so I have like really mixed views when it comes to stuff like that, about like the ethics of it, whether it's right or wrong. So there's one side of it where it's like dog cloning, for example, is a really recent topic that has come into light ever since they made those extinct wolves come back to life. I don't know if you've seen that on the news at any point, but yeah, they did that. There was like a really rare dire wolf breed that they brought back through fertility clinics and stuff like that. But one side of it is like, if you have a dog that's like a male, for example, and this is like male specifically, in my opinion, not females, that's a really great example of the breed, has a great temperament, has a great body shape, and you've bred this dog, and for some reason you haven't been able to achieve something that looks similar or better from breeding it. Should you clone that dog? In my opinion, yeah. If you're doing it to kind of bring back the loss of a dog that you had or whatever, I don't think that that's the case. And I don't think you're going to cure it in any way by doing that. But in terms of like preservation, if that dog is a good example of the breed, yeah, I think there's an argument to be made as to if you should make the same dog again, kind of thing.
I think Barbara Streisand did that.
Yeah. I think there was a case about that before that I read from like ages ago, but yeah. But when it comes to bitches having issues with fertility and then using science to boost the ability of that dog becoming fertile and pregnant later on, if it's already having issues getting pregnant, what issues will follow after that? Because if your dog is not able to get pregnant, then clearly it has some hormonal issues because the sperm is not reaching the egg is not hatching the way it should do. Scientifically, things aren't happening the way it should be. So, if I then scientifically boost that dog to become pregnant, will there be a chance that it's not going to produce milk? Yes. If it does produce milk, will it have the exact amount of nutrients required to make that dog healthy, for the bones to fuse, for it to grow up, whatever? Yes, it would. You know, will I spend a lot of money getting supplements for the puppies and trying to make sure they get other stuff? Yeah. Will it work? Maybe. Because again, it's also about the nutrients being absorbed in the body as well as me giving that to the puppies. The risks involved from doing something like that, for me, it's not worth it. You know, other people can try. It's up to them. I don't have control over other people's actions. But for me specifically, boosting the chance of a female that already can't get pregnant and almost trying to have this thing with them where you're trying to kind of cheat nature and force it to happen regardless. There's no point. You know, if your dog was going to get pregnant, it would have done.
What exactly happens in a fertility clinic?
So, when it comes to that sort of stuff, I believe there's like a measure, like a different measure of ways you can go about doing it. Really, so you can give, I think, medication that helps with like fertilization of like the eggs to increase, so that the dog ends up producing more eggs to hopefully be captured by a sperm and so on, and go through the whole process of being pregnant. You can also do artificial insemination, so you get the dog's sperm and inject, and that happens too. Again, if the dog's not able to, it's not increasing the odds of it happening, but because it's like directly going in through that route and not like naturally, they think that it's going to boost the chance of doing it. There are several studies saying that it does increase the chance of the dog's pregnancy. Others are saying that it's not doing much. Again, you'd have to weigh it up and make your own decision, because there's too many controversial opinions about it. From my personal opinion, I don't think it does a lot more. But that's what happens in those clinics most of the time. It's either medication to boost the fertility of the dog and for it to create more eggs, for it to happen on a more higher level, or they do a dissemination that you were talking about from before.
So basically, dogs go there to be forced.
Yeah.
Whew, my blood is boiling. Right. Okay. So shall we quickly just move on? It's so crazy that these establishments are even able to, conduct business. And I know that many of them aren't even actual established, like it's not like you can go down the street.
Some of them are
it's
just
someone's backyard.
Some of them are just people who have like little mobile sheds in the back of their garden, and they've just bought a few £1,000s worth of equipment, and they're just doing it cash in hand, and no one knows about it. You know, so a lot of them are actually like that. You know,
Have you met backyard breeders?
yeah. I've had one interaction with a guy who had the Japanese cross American Akita, who desperately wanted to breed his male with my female Japanese Akita, because he claimed that his dog was a genius, and that it would be, a disgrace or like a waste of dog for him to not breed his dog, whatever. He thought that, he was denying the world of like a great dog if he didn't breed his dog, almost as if it was like, I don't know, Hitler's super race, where like his dog was like the only one that was worthy of breeding, kind of thing. And yeah, we had that character in our lives. I met a Frenchie breeder who was breeding albino Frenchies, selling them for 8,500 each. And he was saying like, oh, all of them have skin problems, but Frenchies have skin problems regardless. It's not because mine are albino. And the thing is that it definitely is because they're albino. It's not because of the fact that they have the general issues that people with Frenchies face or whatever. It is because they're albino. And I've met an XL bully breeder too, before the ban. So yeah.
So with those people, I mean, nobody wants to be, for lack of a better word, a snitch, but like, don't you feel compelled to do something?
I have done already. When I met the Frenchie breeder, I already told the dog warden in the area that there was unregistered dogs someone was breeding more than 3 times a year, because that's like the legal requirement to register yourself to the council as a breeder and register your dogs if you have 3 or more litters in a year, and he did that continuously. So yeah, I did report him for the same thing. And the XL bully one, I didn't even need to, because in the process of doing it, the ban came and they seized his dogs anyways, because turns out he was involved in other illegal activities. So the police came and took his dogs basically, and that was kind of the end of it. So I didn't even need to. I know obviously no one wants to be compared to a snitch or whatever, but in this case, I don't really feel the guilt of snitching in any way when it comes to that stuff, because at the end of the day, even if he was charging like £200 for an albino Frenchie, it's still wrong. Like, these dogs shouldn't exist. They have all these health problems, and it's painful for them to even be alive, let alone the skin problems that they have and everything. And like, the snouts that they had were pretty much flat.
Yeah.
The dog takes one step and it's already fighting for its life. It's just no point of the dog even living.
No, it's so sad actually, because I only recently learned, like a year ago, that brachycephalic dogs, the flat-faced dogs, the sound that they make, so like like
That
the
grunt,
piggy
pig grunt.
breathing,
Yeah,
that I've always thought that's just what they sound like, but actually that is them struggling to breathe. Like,
exactly,
them breathing
exactly.
is abnormal as a breed.
Yeah, yeah. I
It's
met
just,
one Hungarian. I met one Hungarian lady who had like a retro pug, and like that was the first time in my life ever I saw a pug that actually had a nose. And she was saying that like she can walk him for 3-4 hours, not like no problem. And the thing is, like, I've been a dog walker before, and I've had times where a 10-minute walk is close to killing a Frenchie or like a pug, because it just can't breathe anymore, and I've had to
yeah,
carry it and continue to walk like that. It's happened.
yeah. But people don't know. They just don't know what they're buying. It's crazy, and they're fueling this.
And people in the UK have normalized that. Like, people don't think that a pug having a flat nose or a Frenchie having a flat is a bad thing. Like, people don't know that if you look at photos from like 50, 60, 70 years before of this breed, it didn't look like that. We've made it that way to fit this aesthetic and this idea. And again, like, I call them live, love, laugh people. I don't know what the term is exactly for that kind of person, but it's all these influencer types and the people that I don't know, their idea of a holiday is, I don't know, some sort of Kiss FM package holiday to Ibiza, that kind of type of person. It's all these people that buy like the blue Frenchies or like the blue Dachshunds, silver pit bulls, whatever, like all these designer type breeds that have all these health problems, and they have no idea that, okay, yeah, you've spent 10,000 getting this dog, but also contributing to this idea that dogs are in pain constantly, and that's it.
Yeah. Oh God, it's so tragic if you really think about
Yeah.
it. From the way that they are conceived or bred, the way that they conceive, the allergies, the breathing. Oh gosh, it's just I find it really difficult or challenging to wrap my head around how this could sit. Like, what part of yourself do you switch off to enable that problem? Knowing, you know what I mean? Like, how do
It's tough.
breeders reconcile?
The thing is that you're never going to be able to shut down the problem fully, if that makes sense, because there's just too many people taking it up and not understanding. And the other problem too is that I'm really against this, by the way, but a lot of old school breeders that are like older in age, specifically, they gatekeep so much and they're a bit harsh. And when I say harsh, it's hidden by passion of the breed and the need to protect their breed and things like this. But they're so harsh to these people when they say, I want to breed in the future, and instantly throw all these words like, oh, you got to walk before you even run, and you should not even be thinking about that, whatever. And they're again, the intention is to protect the breed and make sure that the wrong people don't breed, not to throw people off the scent. But if you don't have that character where you take it on as like, oh, it's just an old person saying something, it's not really like a big deal, I'm not going to take it to heart kind of thing, you'll be thrown away from that good community. You'll be less likely to be involved in that good community necessarily, and you'll fall into the arms of a backyard breeder just because they were friendly to you. It'll happen, and you'll think that those people are better or a better community to exist in
Because
because
they're
they
nicer
treated you
to you.
better. Exactly, exactly. So, I mean, like, one experience I can say is personally that I've had myself was my male Akita was like maybe 7 months old, and he was at that teenage gangly phase where he was just all legs and no body. He looks pretty ugly, and I had no idea. because I just wanted to show my dog, and that was it. I had a breeder come to me and say, "You might want to quit with him because he's very ugly." And I was like horrified. I was like, what the hell? I even had tears coming down my eyes because I was like, did my breeder lie to me? Because she said that it was a really good show dog. Like, what the hell is going on? And I
Yeah.
remember I walked into the ring with like tears in my eyes, and the judge was saying, why are you crying? And I thought to myself, oh, because he's so ugly, apparently. And he was like, oh, you don't know that. He hasn't even finished developing yet. You don't know what the finished product's going to look like. For me, he looks like a teenager. He looks fine. Don't worry about it. And luckily, I was the only person in the ring, so he gave me a lot of time to teach me how to show my dog and how to run with him and how to make him look better and stuff like that. And I actually ended up going to the final of that show, and I was on TV and everything, which was cool. But in that moment, I realized that the whole community is just opinions. They take the standard and then they bend the standard to their own opinion to whatever fits their breeding, and then they tell you different based off of what they think.
Right.
So that's why it's really difficult to find a good dog or a bad dog, because one person's idea of a good dog is the next person's idea of a complete nightmare. So
Yeah.
no one's
So
looking at
why
the
do
bare bone
these
standard.
I understand, yeah. So why do these shows happen? What is the actual purpose?
The main idea is to exhibit good examples of the breed, and it's always been about that. And I still think to this day it is mainly about that. But the problem is that like these days there's a lot of corruption in these dog shows. And again, I'm not naming any names or accusing anyone of anything right now, but you see in like UK dog shows as well as like other countries' dog shows, it's the same faces winning the dog shows. And people always throw these questions around where it's like, are judges picking winners based off of who's holding the dog, or is it actually the dog who's winning these positions? Because it comes into question when you start seeing the same faces in the same order constantly. The breeder, followed by the breeder's husband or wife, followed by the breeder's close friend, followed by the close friend's boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. First, second, third, fourth, they're all the
Right.
same people. And it's all from the same kennel, the same whatever. And it gets pulled into question. Again, some of these breeders have been in the game for a really long time and they're really old people now. So the judges that qualified 30, 40 years ago, they were probably both young people who knew each other from back then. And again, it pulls into the question of, are they awarding these people because they know each other, because they're best friends, because they trained together, because they went through their entire career together, whatever. Again, it might be true, it might not be. I'm not saying anything of anyone, but
Hmm.
these questions are often asked
Right.
because you see this stuff. And the same breeders also are saying to newcomers and people who aren't in their inner circle, come to these dog shows, book your entry, because if you don't, then we're going to lose our class and our breed won't be judged anymore. Why would the person come if it's the same result every time? What motivation do they have left to continue to exhibit their dog if they don't stand a chance?
Right. So they exhibit
You
their
know,
dog. If they win, they're able to charge a higher price. Is that basically it? Ultimately, it just feels
some it's a good justification, because if you're the top kennel and the top breeder in your country, and you say my dog is 6,500, not 2,000 like the other breeders, because I'm the top breeder, yeah, it's justifiable. But at the same time, it's crazy because there are kennels who charge I don't know, 8,000 to 10,000 for a Shiba in the UK. I won't name which one specifically, but there is kennels who do that. But yet, if I wanted to get a Shiba from the original region in Japan delivered to my doorstep, I would only pay £5,000, which I would understand because it's coming from Japan. So why is it that a specific UK kennel is able to charge between 6,000 to 10,000? Well, because they're the top or because they're the best? According to who?
yeah.
Because I used to hold that kennel in really high regard before, because of what people told me and because of what I've seen. And now I'm in Europe, it's as if that kennel doesn't exist anymore, and as if that person doesn't exist anymore, whatever. Like you see at that point that actually their status only exists there, and that's it. It's that they're not as highly prestigious. I would say that this person is still really well respected and still really well known in the community, 100% even in Europe. But um, whether you would say their dogs are like exceptional and better than anything that you've seen before and definitely worth the price tag, I don't know. And the other thing too is that you see it with their owners of the kennel, like they say, "Oh, I have a dog from this particular kennel, and they advertise it as if I was saying my bag's a Gucci bag, not like whatever you've got over there, and this is a Gucci, not what you have. They go around with the same level of elitism.
Right. Gosh.
So yeah, it happens. But it's again like such an important thing because again, so these are the same people that are complaining about the fact that there is no newcomers into the exhibitions or coming into showing dogs, whatever. Why would they?
Maybe
You
the
know,
culture is changing.
hopefully it is. Hopefully it is because again, the same way it works for all establishments and all sports in general. Because I do consider confirmation as a sport. The old guard will soon die out, and the new guard will come in, and all the people that are up and coming in the new guard are people that I know specifically too. But these are the people that would never judge anyone, never say a bad thing to anyone. If anything, they would try to help one another. So I do hope that in the future we see a big change in attitudes towards people coming into the sport, coming into breeding. Because the thing is, like, I would want more people breeding, and I would want more people owning these primitive, rare breeds that people have never heard about before. But again, you need to be the right kind of person. Your mindset needs to be correct. You need to have the dog's best interest at heart. You need to be doing it from, again, like I said before, a preservation perspective, not money
Yeah,
making.
I see. Yeah. Gosh. So for someone buying puppies, maybe not just Akitas and Shibas, but in general, what would you say as a breeder? What would you advise them to look out for to ensure that they are not buying genetically, compromised dogs from a backyard breeder or fueling this industry that is just so, so cruel to the mums?
Yeah, I would say definitely ask to see the mum when you come. The father not being present is actually somewhat common. You might find that they used a different stud and they didn't own the father. For me, it's quite lucky because I own my studs and I own both sires and dams, so it will never be that you don't see parents. So that's great, but it's not uncommon for someone to not have the sire of the litter. The other thing too is teething. How much are they teething? Because when you meet a puppy, it's not uncommon for that dog to nibble and chew on your fingers or your clothes, whatever, but how hard are they doing it? Because if they're puncturing skin, the mom has not corrected that behavior. The mom has not invested a lot of time into making sure that they don't know what a pain pressure like threshold looks like. Even me with my puppy, they would bite, for example, and even if they didn't break skin or hurt me, I would still be like, ow, just to trigger a reaction from them because they would then know that they're not supposed to do that because that sound would be enough for them to think alternatively about how hard they bite. I'm quite lucky because I had the sire in my litter, so the dad was actually quite great at snapping them into correction when they were biting too hard because he's actually quite sensitive when it comes to being bitten, luckily. So the
Uh,
puppies were great when it came to nipping and biting. They barely even did anything. You would just feel their teeth, like the pressure of the tooth on your finger. You would not feel anything more. They would never really bite because Ichi's really sensitive. So that's another thing to look out for. The second one I would say is, can they calm down like shortly after the interaction? Because when you come into a room, like obviously you're a stranger
self-regulation.
coming in. Yeah, energy regulation. Yeah, 100%. Are they able to do that? Because puppies don't have a lot of gas in the tank. They don't have much. Especially when you pick them up like 10, 11 weeks old, whatever. They don't have like a ton. If you spend half an hour, 5 to 10 minutes of that interaction should be when they go, oh, God, all that playing, I've got to take a rest. They should do it, you
Yeah.
know, 100%. The last thing I would say too is, are they the type of puppy that just wants to jump up constantly and just want to be like, pick me, look at me, give me attention? Are they needy in that way? Because then you know if the breeder has left them alone so they can actually decompress properly or not. You know, I would do this quite a lot in the sense where we had French doors in the house that we lived in, so there was like a big window that you could kind of watch them from. I would put a deck chair outside and I would shut the door to make them think that I've left the room. And I would leave the pen shut so they couldn't escape into any part of the house. and I would just watch them to see what they would do. And naturally, they would howl for a little bit, scream for a little bit, and then get too tired and go to sleep. And then I would wait for half an hour, then come back into the room. And they learned very quickly that they can just be left alone and go to sleep. And that's it. They're not going to die. They don't need me there forever. And
Yeah.
they learn how to be independent in that way. So the ability that you're not giving them too much attention and they don't seem to mind it is another thing to look out for too. You know, a lot of the times, puppies, like, you see them and they just come to you and they just want attention constantly and they're almost fighting each other for the attention because you pick up one in specific because you like the look of it or because it came to you first, and its brother, it's chewing on its ear, or the other one's grabbing its tail and trying to like pull him away from you or something like that, you know. So I would say, yeah, those three areas are the most common to look out for, because then you know if a breeder has not only done a good job, but also the mom has been a good influence on them, and you're picking up dogs that are mentally at least on the first step of the ladder to achieving full mental maturity.
Right. Okay. That's so interesting because I think there's a lot of parallels between the, I guess, cognitive and behavioral development of puppies compared to humans. You know,
Yeah,
that object permanence, like where you're able to leave the room and come back, and they like they learn that you didn't disappear, like you didn't, like, you know what I mean, evaporate or whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then the attachment theory, with regards to that neediness and giving them that, like having that bond with the mum and the litter mates that is sufficient for them to survive on their own, I guess, without being overly needy or anxious or
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want them to have like a sense of like independence from a
yeah,
young age, because don't forget too, I mean, like, not everyone is like me and my wife where we devote our entire lives to the dogs. People have work, people have, I don't know, family emergencies, or their friend needs them and they need to leave the house all of a sudden. Like, if your puppy isn't able to just go to sleep or play with a toy and then tire itself out and go to sleep afterwards, and then you come home and nothing bad happens, you can't live that way. You know, it's such a bad thing, and also gives you a lot of anxiety, because if you're dealing with a family emergency or you had to go out, whatever, and in the back of your head it's like, oh, I hope he hasn't destroyed the house or pooed on my laptop or something like that. You know, you can't live that way either. It's a terrible way to go about doing it. You know, it's not a comfortable experience at all.
no, no, it's not. I have that challenge with Duna at the moment because I can't even take the bin out, you know,
Yeah.
and I can hear her barking. She goes bonkers. She's like, "Oh my God, she's left me again," you know, even though I'm back in like 5 minutes. But yeah, no, I think it would have made a huge difference if dogs are able to have that level of independence. It makes a huge difference. Otherwise, it can
Yeah.
become. I think having an anxious dog can become, what's it called? Is that carer's fatigue? You know, it's very draining if you can't leave the dogs at
100
all.
100%. You know, like, I remember when I picked up my Shiba, we couldn't drive at the time. So we had to go from Brighton to Manchester to pick up the dog by train. We left the dogs alone for 9.5 hours in total that day, just because there was so many delays and everything's going on with the trains and all that sort of stuff, and as it does with railways, as you know. Um, but every time we looked for the camera, nothing. Playing with each other, sleeping, playing with each other, sleeping, because we had two Akitas living at the time in the house. And the worst thing that they did was, my female Akita Kitsune, she pooed in the bathtub because she couldn't wait any longer. And I was like, how can I even be mad at that? Because you did it in such a convenient spot, and all I had to do was turn the shower head on and wash it off, and that's it. You know, how could I even be mad at that? I came home at like midnight, and I introduced the Shiba to them both, and they went to sleep after that. And the thing is, this is again another testament to how much time I give in terms of like socialization with my dogs and the correct attitude to have towards other dogs, because they accepted her immediately. She fell asleep with them on the first night, which is a big deal for a lot of people. But yeah, and I remember going to the toilet, and because I had such a long day, and I just found this big lump of poo in the bathtub, and I was like, well, I can't even be mad at that because it's not even
Yeah,
like it's an inconvenient spot, you know. So yeah,
yeah. Oh, bless them. Yeah, 9 hours is a very long time. I got
yeah,
into a debate with someone recently, actually, because they were talking about in Norway, I think it's illegal to leave your dogs for over a certain period. I think it's 4 hours, right?
it is 4 hours, yeah, and you need to take an exam before being eligible to buy a dog too. Yeah,
What do
and
you
you
think
need to
about
do.
that?
I think it's good. The whole idea behind the law is good, but at the same time, if my granddad's in hospital, my dad's in hospital, whatever, and I need to go or whatever, and the hospital isn't going to allow the dog to be there, should I be arrested for it later on? No. It has its caveats, with like every law, there's good intentions behind it. But
Yeah,
whether it's always so black and white in a real life scenario is a completely different question, but the intention is good. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And at the same time, like the same goes for the law of passing an exam to get a dog. You could pass the exam and be a complete, utter disgusting human being to that dog. You
that's
can
very
abuse it
true.
after, you can do whatever, just because you passed an exam, it doesn't mean anything, like I can pass my driving exam and then run somebody over the next day, like is my driving instructor now at fault because I'm secretly a maniac and didn't tell him anything about my life, again, it's one of those things that I don't really think that we could actually find like an exam that would fully like what's it called? Fully find a
Mitigate?
way to fully find a way to actually qualify someone as that's the word I'm looking for, qualify someone as a good dog owner, and the thing is too, I actually don't believe that I'll ever be like the perfect dog owner. I actually think that it's something that I'm chasing forever. That's my mindset when it comes to being a dog owner. I'm always trying to think of how I can make their life better. Like, yeah, I moved a whole country for them to a country where I don't even speak the language, and luckily I have my wife with me. But even though I'm doing these things for them and every day I'm training them and every day I'm trying to find ways to do something different, whatever, I'm trying to find new routes for them to walk on and stuff like that. I'm still thinking deep down that there's something more or better that I could be doing for them. And I do think that it's a um, beautiful thing to think about and to enter that mind space because a lot of clients ask, at what point do I stop training? And it's like, I don't know who told you that you should stop training, because if you do, then okay, your dog's excitement kind of goes away, and your dog's just gonna kind of settle into this mopey. Okay, we walk along the beach and we grab ice cream and then we go home every day. That's what we do. I guess that's my
Mm.
life. And if it doesn't change in any way, or at least you're not stimulating your dog or trying to find other ways of doing it, it's not really good for anyone, really. Like if I said to you, well, here's a house for you and your child, and this is your routine for the next 50 years, and you don't get to do anything different other than that, you'd go insane. It wouldn't
Yeah,
work.
yeah,
And it's not right for a child to be in that moment. And we focus so much on child development and stuff like that. It's a really big sector, but we don't sadly do it for animals in any way. And not just for dogs too. Horses have the same thing, cats
yeah.
have the same thing, even lizards have the same thing. And no one talks about it enough.
No, but it's so, so important, just thinking about the XL bully ban and breed-specific legislation. Obviously, we have learned over time that that actually didn't do anything to stop or, reverse, bites from dogs. And so, yeah, really curious from your perspective. Firstly, what can be done? What can be done to stop dogs from biting humans? Or what is the reason, do you think, that that is happening, and why is it on the rise?
It's a whole like myriad of reasons, really. I mean, the first one is the obvious, and that's people with egos should not pick up dogs. That's the biggest one out of all of them because, again, I'm not to seem discriminatory towards any demographics in any way, but XL bullies were bought by drug dealers. They were bought by people who um, had a tendency to do illegal activity and had this feeling that people would possibly break into their homes and steal their possessions or steal whatever they were selling, whatever. Even on the news at some point, I remember, I can't remember if it was Piers Morgan or somebody else that they spoke to, but a breeder of XL bullies admitted that the only reason he bred these dogs was so that drug dealers could start paying him for a dog specifically, and it could be known as the drug dealer's dog kind of thing. And again, if you look at all the people who owned them, it was majority either people in illegal activities or people that were selling drugs, whatever. And so that's the first part is that people should qualify the customers that come to them when it comes to buying dogs, whatever. And if it's in any way obvious or made known to this person that maybe they're into that sort of stuff, or maybe they have minor connections in that kind of activity, to not sell the dog to that person. We had it with our Akita puppy. One person came and said, "Can I pay cash?" And I really wasn't comfortable doing that because I would have to declare it alternatively, and I have to prove that he gave me the money and so on and so forth. And I said to him, we did agree that it would be done via bank transfer. Is there any reason why it can't be done that way? And he basically said that if he gave cash, it wouldn't be him paying cash and it'd be his friend paying us. And would it be okay if we met his friend in a car park of Churchill Square, like the shopping center, whatever, and then we delivered the dog to him in the car park and stuff like that? And it seems super sketchy. And in my mind, I was like, no, this is starting to sound like a drug drop off, like not even a puppy pickup. Like, no, not doing any of this stuff. Like, I'm not interested. And his home address wasn't even a home address. It was like the address of like a corner shop in London. It wasn't even like a house. He just gave me some address that was near him, I guess. And that was it. But people don't think about that. And a lot of breeders, when they sell dogs to people, they just go, yeah, sure, mate. Like if that's your address, that's your address. And if you want to pay cash and it's your friend dropping it off, yeah, sure. I don't mind, all good, whatever. They don't think about who's buying it and where it's going to, whatever. And not much thought is put behind that because ultimately they don't care, And we even had one owner who was a bit confused as to why we're staying in touch with her because her Labrador breeder blocked her after the purchase. And for me, that's scary. I don't know why your
Yeah,
breeder
of
would block
course.
you shortly after you buying the dog. What if I need help later on? What if I have a question about the dog? Like nothing, you know. Like
Yeah.
it's been 4 years that I've had my Akitas, and to this day I still talk to my breeder because I have a question or just because I'm curious about something, and she'll answer me. And I do the same with my owners too. Like anytime they need help, I'll go do it. If someone needs training, I'll fly on my own expense and train their dog, whatever. I'll do whatever I can. But people don't qualify their owners well enough, and that's another reason why dogs bite. And the second one mainly is about we don't have a good understanding of how to approach dogs and how to be around dogs. It's almost as if like they're this jester in our lives that provide entertainment, and we're almost entitled to walk over to somebody's dog and say, "Hey, not even let me touch your dog. I'll just put my hand on your dog and do whatever." Like if your dog wasn't friendly, why did you bring it here? That's the mentality that we've adopted
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
day and age. And when your dog displays any kind of uncomfortableness or even aggression, dare I say, it's like, oh, why did you bring it here? It's like, you do realize I brought it into this public environment so that it does have the ability in the future to be good amongst people. And because of idiots like you, now I have to backtrace and go into a low distraction environment and build up to this cafe again because you've been an idiot and walked over and part of my French, fucked everything up. Uh, that's how it is for people. And again, same with off leash dogs. Like I've had it in Brighton, not even in a park, like in an urban environment on a street, not even
Oh,
in a dog park, where it's illegal to have your dog off the leash on
yeah.
a street like that. Come up to my Shiba, who's already anxious about life in general, let alone your dog. That's now ruined everything. I now have to do 2 months extra training because you've decided to just not have the patience and hold your dog on a lead. Simple as that. And the worst thing is, I've spent a lot of energy arguing with these people, trying to educate these people, whatever, to the point where you realize you're talking to a brick
A
wall.
wall.
It doesn't change anything. And obviously, you having an anxious dog, I
Yeah.
understand all these things too, but people don't care. And so now you need to start resorting to different techniques. And it's like, I had one other situation where a cane corso off leash ran at my Shikoku aggressively, was already growling and already like in that stance of ready to attack. I picked her up and I kicked the dog because I had no other option because I felt unsafe in that moment, right? He ripped half of my boot off and I walked home half a shoe barefoot with that dog because he took my boot, the heel half, and walked
Yeah.
off after
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, luckily
I
it
still,
was just a shoe.
yeah, luckily it was like a steel toe cap construction boot type thing because I wear them often for dog training. So it only ripped that part off and that was it. I searched the owner for 2 hours because in my mind I thought there's either someone who's lost their dog and is looking for that dog, or there is an idiot with headphones in walking around Preston Park who has no idea what his dog is up to.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Couldn't find the owner, couldn't find anything. And I thought, my dog's traumatized. I can barely breathe and look straight at this point because of how shocked I am and the adrenaline and everything. So walked home. But again, our perceptions don't change when it comes to this stuff, and too many people are impatient when it comes to their dog in general, and so that's another reason why dogs bite. And the third one is because people want their dog to bite, and this is something I don't understand in any way, and I don't think I ever will. Like, no one will present an argument to me that's going to be like, oh, my dog should bite in this environment, because all the people that are into the protection work and bite work, whatever, if you're actually being attacked by someone and someone's doing a house invasion or whatever, believe me, you don't have to train your dog to be in that position. Your dog will find the courage, the instinct to go for it. 100%. I have Akitas. They're very guarding in character. Believe me if I tell you, I dare someone to try to break into my house, you will lose your limbs. And I have never trained them for bite work or anything like that. Like the most common argument for bite work is that it's a stimulus release and they learn to control their anger. And it's no different to an MMA fighter or a boxer heading into a ring and just stepping into that mindset. And it's like, if you're a boxer or an MMA fighter, you know the risks of going in there. You know that potentially someone can deliver a blow to your head, to your body, and it might be the last thing that you feel forever. You may get paralyzed, you may die, whatever. You know that. People have told you that that can happen. My dog doesn't know that. And dogs, when they get into fights and stuff like that, they do not know that it could possibly end their life in any way. Like they don't know that because for them it's a disagreement. Oh,
Hello.
I'm
Oh, there you
inside now.
go. Oh, hello. Look at the beauty. Where is he? Oh, hello. So gorgeous. Wow, that's a wolf.
I'll just do this instead because it's easier.
Okay, we've gone all dog now. Yep.
See the two there.
Where am I looking? Oh. Oh. So gorgeous. I can't wait to cuddle with Duna after our call. They're just beautiful. Oh, there you go. So, we dropped, unfortunately, that last little clip didn't end because our line got cut off.
I was saying that the last reason why dogs bite is because people want them to. And again, this is a really, really big problem. And luckily in my career, I haven't had a lot of it, like in terms of clients who have deliberately put their dog in a situation where it wouldn't want to bite, and I was saying before that, like, a lot of people that do bite sports or any type of training that involves a dog biting in any way, they always use the excuse of it's a stimulus release or it's anger control for the dog. And it's no different to a boxer or an MMA fighter heading into the ring for a fight, whatever. But at the end of the day, if you're a boxer or an MMA fighter, you know fully that there is a risk that you can either receive a blow to the head or an injury that might even end your life or paralyze you, whatever, so on and so forth. You know those risks. Your trainer has told you those risks. Other people that you know have said, you could possibly die in there. Your dog doesn't know that. And it's completely different. And when it comes to teaching a dog those things, you can't really do it anyways. You can't really teach a dog that there's a risk that you might die in this. And even when dogs fight each other, it's not like, oh, I'm going to kill you kind of thing. It's a disagreement between the two of them. That dog isn't even consciously aware when it wants to kill, that it's trying to do that fatal thing, whatever. Like, there's plenty of videos out there of huskies killing chihuahuas that have maybe taken it too far with them, whatever, because they just lost anger and just completely snapped or whatever. You can see they walk off and they shake it off and they just walk off after. They don't really care because it doesn't register in their head the way that with us, the guilt of killing someone would, So that's like the final one, really. And like, again, I've had it where a teenager had a pocket bully, pocket pit bull, whatever it's called, smaller version of an XL bully, tiny version. He would grab his pillow and encourage him to bite the pillow and to shake it and really go for it. Not in like a tug of war sense, but to attack it full on. And so what did this cause? Well, every time he wore a hoodie or a baggy clothing, Rocco, the little pocket bully, would think, "Ah, I attack that kind of texture, that kind of look. I'll go for it." And he reached a point where he couldn't get him to stop doing that, and so everyone was pretty much up for grabs at that point. The funny thing is, and again, like I've had like minor training, not full on, but minor training with the Kazakh police force with their attack dogs and how they do security work and stuff like that. My dad's taken me to see them and stuff. I've got cousins in the Kazakh military too, so I've had some experiences. But the main thing that they teach the dog in that environment, first and foremost, is how to let go of things. So they make the dog pick up an object and they make them let go. Because funny enough, when you're teaching a dog how to bite, the most important part is not the bite and the bite force, it's the letting go. Because if you can't let go, then you're pretty much screwed in that environment, because once it's latched on, it's latched on. If you haven't taught it a clear let go command, you're screwed. He did not know that because he's ill-informed about bite training, because he's not aware of what it takes to get that dog in that environment. It took me 9 months to just get that dog to realize the fact that you don't attack fabric, you don't attack baggy clothing, you don't just launch and go off for it. He would break leashes going for it. It wasn't even safe anymore. And I told him before, like, you're going to have to spend a few months at home desensitizing him at home, because you can't go into public like this. If he sees a child in a hoodie or in a onesie or something like that and he goes for it, because children do walk around in onesies like that, and your leash snaps, you can't explain to the officer, my leash broke. Sorry that your child's dead now or your child's severely injured. You're at fault. Your dog will be put down. You need to understand that. And you can tell in that moment that was the first time he understood that responsibility, because no one told him this before. And suddenly teaching a dog to be aggressive and biting that way wasn't cool anymore. And it wasn't something he wanted anymore. And you can tell in that moment. But beforehand, he was like, yeah, I want my dog to bite things, and I want him to be a bit aggressive, and I want him to be a bit of a protector or guardian, whatever. And ended up backfiring greatly,
Yeah, made a rod for his own back. That's not good.
Pretty much.
So that's awful, really awful. And it's such a shame, really, because like I don't know, maybe it's hard to say, because I want to say, like, from what I've seen, and I've been in a wide range of environments in the UK, I just can't see the need for a protection dog. I just can't. But anyway,
I don't see a need for it either. Even like in certain parts of London where crime's really high and everything, I don't get it. Like the closest that I've ever had any like relatability in that environment was a lady who bought a Rottweiler after she'd been mugged in London. But again, she didn't take him to bite work or any type of bite security training or anything like that. She didn't do anything. She just wanted a dog beside her that would make people think twice about picking on her as a victim or picking on her as a target, whatever. She wanted that comfortability of someone will, if I'm at an ATM again or whatever and someone's going to mug me, they'll think, oh, not her because she's got a Rottweiler. I'm good. She was young enough to take care of that dog. And, she used to do a lot of triathlon work too. So she was very fit and everything. She was definitely more than capable of physically exercising that dog. But sadly she got mugged at an ATM when she was taking out money, and she just didn't want to be a victim anymore. So she was like, you know what? I'm going to get that one dog that would make you think, do not pick on me, do not even think about it. And I think she made a good decision, because her dog was actually quite soppy the way the Rottweilers are. She just wanted a lot of cuddles and everything. But again, you'd only know that if you knew a bit about dogs. But generally, if you walked past a Rottweiler, you would not think, okay, I'm going to pick on that woman to rob her of her money,
Yeah. What a shame. What a shame that she felt the need to do that.
Yeah.
I'm guessing when you trained a Rottie, it was a softie, so there wasn't really much, I guess, coercion or aversive needed.
I only had one incident where it was needed in any way, and that was when I had one who came from Romania, and they basically lied to the guy and basically said that he was a great family dog, and he was just a bit misunderstood because of his breed and whatever. they get the dog, and it literally wants to bite everyone. And I mean everyone. It doesn't even matter, male, female, child, whatever. Ridiculously aggressive, and it was a lot bigger than the average rottie that you normally see. I don't know what they fed him beforehand or whatever, but I was even thinking to myself, like, how did they catch him? You know, like if it was a stray and they brought him in, like how did they even put a lead around him and just say come? You know, like because he was just so aggressive. I put it down to bad genetics because every habit-based training that I did to condition him out of it didn't work. And I spent a few months giving him the time and the patience to get there. Because he would almost do this thing where it was almost like Alzheimer's or like maybe even bipolar. He would be fine 1 minute and the next minute he would just bite straight away. Not even any warning signs, just go straight to biting. I spoke to like my lecturer about it and my dad about it, and I even got my dad to have a look to kind of advise me a bit better. And my dad even came close to tears because he hates saying it, but he was saying, I think we need to use an e-collar for him because I don't see any other way. And we did. And it was really weird because the lowest voltage was what we started out on. We never went to the highest when we didn't need to either. But that slight buzz on his neck, it would kind of make him twitch slightly, like side to side twitch ever so slightly, and then he would just give it up. He would not try and bite anymore. Like you would catch him in the moment where he would try and snap, you'd press the remote, and it would stop. A few weeks of doing it, he kind of realized that he's not able to get aggressive anymore because when he does, this electric thing happens, and that's it. And so we kept it on him for the remaining months of training, and then at month 6, we took it off and we went back to normal collar, and he didn't do it anymore after that. And a lot of people would actually advise to keep it on for the sake of safety, just in case kind of thing. If you need to use it, then it's there, kind of thought process. But I didn't feel the need to keep it on anymore because I felt that in his mind, he fully knew he's not able to get aggressive anymore because in his mind, when I do, it hurts. And so I'm not going to do it anymore because it hurts me. That's the conclusion that we came to. And to this day, years after, he's still on a normal collar. He doesn't feel the need to do it anymore. And like my assessment overall was that there was some micro trigger that I couldn't pick up on or no one else could see, whatever it was, annoyed him and it made him bite. Whether it was a shift of energy, whatever it was, the wind blowing the wrong way, whatever it might have been, it caused him to get aggressive and we needed to fix it. And he realized in that moment that actually it's a bit frustrating and a bit painful for him when he does get aggressive, so best not to. And then he gave it up. And that was the only time that I've resorted to aversion in any way, shape, or form. I've had it in rescues too. We've had some Tibetan Mastiffs that were like 80, 90 kilogram, huge dogs that were aggressive with other dogs. It wasn't my decision, but the charities at the time in Turkey, they had prong collars as standard for these breeds. So you weren't allowed to use flat collars for those breeds specifically, especially if they were aggressive towards other dogs. But again, do you need them? No, not really. I do believe that the effect that you create from a prong could easily be changed and channeled into a flat collar where if it's underneath the chin of the dog, you can redirect the head and cause some conditioning to lower the risk of the dog being reactive to other dogs,
Okay. The final question I have for you, actually 2, if that's okay with you, just to end our interview. I would like to know what you would say to people who believe or say that you are contributing to the rescue crisis through being a breeder.
I mean, me myself, I know that I'm not personally, so it doesn't really rub me the wrong way, if that makes sense. When people say those sorts of things, do breeders contribute to the shelter problem? Yeah. There wouldn't be a need for a shelter if there wasn't a breeder out there. Chicken and egg theory, which one came first? If there wasn't an irresponsible breeder, then there wouldn't be a need for a shelter. And if if shelters are struggling, it's at the expense of irresponsible breeders. I do everything in my power to make sure that I don't contribute anything. And as I mentioned to you before, money's never an object to me when it comes to getting the dogs back to me. I will do whatever is necessary. You know, I'll even I'll go to whatever extent, even if it was a case when he started to hire a private jet to bring a dog back here, kind of thing. I would work tirelessly to afford that because I would have to, because I'm not rich. But I wouldn't ever allow any of the dog that came from my breeding even spend a minute in a shelter, as opposed to other breeders where people say, "Oh, you know, it's not viable for me, or I can't do it, whatever." I'll make it work some way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the end of the day, I know that when a dog comes from an owner, it's not going to be behavior-wise the way that my dogs are, because they've lived a different life. And I know that when I tell my owners, set clear boundaries and do this and do that, I know they don't follow everything that I say to a T. I know that I'll have to work really hard to get that dog at the standard that the dogs are here. I know that for a fact. And again, it's nothing that I won't do because I don't have any other job or life commitment other than these guys. So for me, it's not a problem. But do I understand it when people say that breeders contribute to shelters? 100%. I get it with utmost certainty. But at the same time, is there anything wrong with someone wanting a dog that doesn't have any preconceived notions about life, and people want to know everything about the dog in terms of health history, pedigree, whatever, and they want to be completely reassured that they're getting a good experience as a first-time dog owner or first-time owner of the breed? Yeah, they have that right. You know, should everyone adopt? No, because again, like I said before, it takes a particular caliber of human, in my opinion, to find a good, suitable dog that fits into your lifestyle, if that makes sense. But also, how exactly do you fix that problem yourself? Because does that person have the means to get the right training for that dog? Maybe yes, maybe no. Does that person have the time and the energy to go through that problem with that dog because it's a rescue and it has an issue, whatever? You might be lucky enough to have one of those ones where, for no fault of its own, it's come into rescue, whatever. But for the most part, they've been abused in some way, shape, or form, left abandoned wherever, and they need a lot of work, you know? So, yeah, I do think that breeders in general do cause a problem when it comes to contributing towards shelters. But me personally, no, I don't. I don't think that I do.
Okay. Right. Final question. What do you think we can learn from dogs?
I think we can learn patience as a first off. Like, again, I say this to everyone when it comes to my dog training versus other people's dog training. I don't want to cultivate an environment where you're relying on commands or buzzwords or food or a toy to teach your dog something. I want to cultivate an environment where your dog does the right decision because it wholeheartedly believes that that's the case. You know, when a dog invites you to attack or to a fight, in your mind, you believe that it's better to follow me and to look at me for guidance rather than engaging in that fight or responding in any way, you know? So patience is a big one for me when it comes to what we can learn. I wasn't really famous for being patient person in the beginning. My dad taught me that for a lot of trial and error, and I've always been that kid where it's like, well, I want it to happen now. Why, if it's not, then I'm gonna throw a tantrum about it. I've always been that kid, but through working with dogs and like my dad telling me, if you want to work with these breeds specifically too, you need to be patient. And my dad teaching me that has been the greatest life lesson of all. If it hasn't been for the dogs, it's been a good character improvement for sure. So patience, first one. Respect is another one. It's a big thing for me because, like I said to you before, we're so involved in this environment where we expect things from a dog and like the kind of gesture in our lives and the entertainment, whatever. And it's like, no, you know, you know what I mean? It's not the case at all. This is a living and breathing thing. It's a sentient being. You know what I mean? Like you have to look at it from this viewpoint where if it doesn't want to
pet you or be interested in you, then it doesn't want to, and which is why people are often confused and they pull this face with me where they say to me, "Can I pet your dog?" And I say, "If it wants to." You can see it in their eyes. They're kind of trying to calculate what it means when I say this. And it's like, lower your body. And if my dog gets up and wants to interact with you, then cool. But if not, then don't stick your hand and force it to interact, because I don't like that either. When people like come into my dog's space and they go, "Oh, hello," whatever, my dog feels this need to get up and interact. No, if it wants to, then it does. And if it doesn't, then, like the saying says, let sleeping dogs lie, let them sleep, let them do whatever they want to. Don't interrupt me when I'm having a meal outside or whatever, when my dog's sleeping and ask, "Oh, can I pet your dog?" Does she look like she wants to be petted? No, let it be, kind of thing. But again, I've had times when I'm at the bus stop and my dog is looking at someone's eyes and wagging her tail like crazy. And it's like, she wants to say hi to that person, So if that person says, "Can I pet your dog?" I will say it straight away, I think she wants to say hi to you more than you want to say hi to her, So should probably happen, and I let it happen as a result of it. But yeah, respect is the second most important for me when it comes to that kind of thing. The third one I would say is compassion, because when it comes to like learning about love as an emotion, I really do believe that you end up learning love on a deeper level when you have a dog. Maybe you do with your partner or significant other, but I don't really know how to explain it other than the fact that there's times where you're on a walk and you just share some eye contact and you can tell this dog is just bursting with love for you in their eyes, you can see it. And you're just so happy. You don't know why, but you just are, and you can just feel this, I don't know. The leash is not something physical anymore. It's actually like a translation line between the both of you. Kind of like an avatar when they like hook up their ponytail to the horse, and they start bonding with the animal. I feel like it's almost the same thing, when you grab that lead and you put it on their collar or the harness, whatever, and you go out for that walk, they feel something from you and you feel something from them, Suddenly, whatever you felt 10 minutes before is completely irrelevant. Or if you were sad before, you're no longer sad. Whether you were anxious before, you're not really anxious anymore. I mean, that's something me personally, I've struggled with quite a lot, of just being overwhelmed in general. And suddenly a dog walk just fixes everything for me, But you end up having this unspoken love. You can't express it. You don't even say it to them half the time. You just feel it. It just happens. You know what I mean? And so it becomes that way. And that's why I say to people all the time, I don't know how people live without dogs. I don't. Because for me, it's such a waste of a life to go through these moments and go through all this whatever without them, And even when I went to Lithuania, everyone was saying to me, "You're crazy for packing your life up in a van and traveling for 4 days with your dogs." I wouldn't have want to have done it any other way, really. They weren't anxious, neither was I. Every time I looked behind me in the van, everyone was sleeping. Every stop that I did, I explored a new country with them, and it was great as a result of it. I never felt bad about it in any way. But yeah, in terms of what they can teach me, top three, like I said, and it will always be the same. I'll never change my answer in any way. I always feel this emotional about them. Patience, respect, compassion, always. And it goes the same for training too. I don't believe you can do it in any other way. Like, there's one couple that's on my Instagram that I share quite a lot because it's just ridiculous how their story started. But Puppy was aggressive towards the older adult dog that they had. And the trainer came in and said, "You need to treat them like barn animals and you need to keep them separate from each other all the time. Because if they see each other again, they will kill each other." And there's no other way of doing it other than this. Believe me, if there was a way they could be together and they could live their life together, I would have figured it out by now. Within a month of training with me, they were able to coexist together in the same room on a civil basis. No play, but sleeping together, eating together, no problem. They're 4 or 5 months in now, and they have a bond that you would think they were, loving each other for years, no problem. And I can't believe that people approach dog training in such a cold and cruel way. And it makes me think that maybe they treat their own dogs the same cold, cruel method. And it blows my mind, because the same way I love my dogs, I would love Duna if Duna was a client of mine, or if you were a client of mine, and the same goes for other people. I end up getting emotionally attached and viewing that dog as if it was my own dog. And so every process of training, I will treat that dog and owner with the same emotional state as I would for my own dog. I would never try to push the dog into an emotional state where it can't handle it just because I want the training to be done quicker in any way. Or I wouldn't say, try this without thinking, oh, would it work, whatever. I wouldn't set it up for failure in that sense. But you need to have that compassion and that warmth in you to train effectively, in my opinion, as a behaviorist. If you don't, then you're in the wrong business for sure, because you're not thinking about the welfare of the animal. You're not thinking about the longevity effect of that person's life with that dog. It's not worth doing, in my opinion. But yeah.
So if somebody said to you, where's your proof that it's possible with the extreme cases? I know that you mentioned before there was only one occasion where you have used an electric collar.
Yeah.
But yeah, typically I've heard the argument from balance trainers basically saying, like, show me that it's possible.
What, to have a extremely aggressive case that's been solved without an e-collar, without the Versa method? My Instagram is more than proof of that. I've had puppies attacking adult dogs. I've had adult dogs attacking humans. I've had huskies who have attacked humans and been on court orders by the police. Later on rehabilitated, going into train stations, going into public places, whatever. I have had, I would say, 10 times, 100 times more cases of dogs being rehabilitated through patience and through compassion with no use of aversive tools, and one occasion where aversive tools have worked. So for me, in the space of like 6-7 years that I've been working, for me to say I've only used it once and the only one time it's worked, that's it, and other times I've had no need for it, for me that's proof enough. And the other thing too is, don't forget, balance trainers aren't even open to seeing the proof. They say, show me whatever, but then when you do show them, they try to find every single excuse to bite at that thought process or to go for that moment in time and say, oh, but it wasn't like this and it wasn't like that, and if it was like this then it would be different, whatever. And it's like, if you're going into that route and ignoring the blind evidence that's being shown in front of you, I can make the same argument for you. I could say, oh, but that's only being done in this specific setting and this and that, whatever. I could pick apart your whole logic too and do the same thing that you're doing to me, for example. But again, there's so many people using e-collars for the most stupid things, as basic as healing in a street. Why? For what? Or off-leash walking in a woodland area. Again, why? Why? I would like to know, because if it's for cases where, I don't know, you have an Akita and you live in Cornwall and it's just cows all over your house, unfenced, and you have that kind of dog, then I would not understand, but it would somewhat justify the reasoning of why you've done it, because you have a dog that could potentially hurt cattle, whatever.
A sheep or livestock, yeah.
Yeah, and a farmer may just take that decision into his own hands and shoot your dog. I kind of understand that to some extent, but if you live in London or whatever, or you live in like a more urban setting, and you're just using an e-collar to make your dog heel down the street, whatever, why? And I see this all the time. Like, it's so funny because now you mentioned it. Like, I have one client who messaged me a year ago, basically saying, I have an Akita. She pulls like crazy. My life's a misery. My wrists are aching all the time, and I really feel like I'm getting like tennis elbow at 28, and it shouldn't be happening, and I'm doing something wrong. Could you possibly help me? And I said, sure. Gave him the prices. He told me that my courses were out of his price range, and he would have to save up and hit me up later on. And I said, no problem, that's fine. A year after that message, he said that he's in the process of becoming a trainer, and he wants to know about my business model because he wants to do something similar where he helps spitz breeds specifically. And I told him the academy had an accreditation course. It's a 3-year course similar to what universities do, and I teach you everything from A to Z. Wasn't interested in that. He just wanted free advice on how I do my business, how I do everything. And I told him that I wouldn't really be open to sharing how I do things for free. It's not something that I want to do. I paid a lot of money for my education. So should you. And that was my argument. So we left it like that. In 6 months, amazingly, he became a master behaviorist somehow, and he is now advertising that he's a spitz specialist because he has an Akita with an e-collar that can heal perfectly and can focus on him super well. You know, from what I've heard from people, he can't even keep free clients, so it's kind of good that he can't really get many clients because, again, the training methods are insane. Because you watch some of his videos and he's kneeing a German Shepherd in the face, trying to make him stop attacking him. Other videos, he is grabbing a puppy and slamming him onto a tarmac, trying to tell him off to not bite him. Why? Makes no sense. And these people are willingly falling into the trap of free training because they can't afford it, or maybe they don't want to pay for training. And actually, all they're doing is traumatizing their dog. And they'll come to someone like me or someone similar to me later on saying that they had this experience and it's made an impact on their dog. And now we're working between 6 months to a year to undo the trauma in the beginning. And then after that, working another 6 months to a year to teach the dog new behaviors, new foundations, new everything. So, yeah. It's crazy.
It seems so polarizing at the moment. I wish there was a way for people to see each other's perspectives and kind of find a humane middle ground, but I can't see that happening anytime soon, which is a shame, really, because in the meantime, dogs are suffering.
No, 100%.
But anyways, I will...
The middle line is so tough to reach because the problem is that people like me don't want to find a mid ground with people like that, because even borderline hurting a dog is super wrong in my ideals, the way I feel and everything. Like, I could never do half aversive or 5% aversive or even 1% aversive. I wouldn't be open to it, like in any way, because I've had too much case studies of dogs that have been rehabilitated the way that I've been taught, the way that I'm doing it now through R9 plus and like punishment-free based training, stuff like that. I've had too many success stories from that method to even listen to how that could be done that way, whatever. I've not had enough experiences where the aversiveness has worked, so therefore I don't believe in it. But at the same time, aversive trainers or balanced trainers will never incorporate enough positivity in their training to make it balanced in any way. And that's the funny part, because you look at balanced trainers and there's not much balance going on. It's the irony in the name. And like a lot of the people who have companies that are called the letter K and then the number 9 are in the red flag community, in my opinion, of people who do that aversive training most of the time. And I would advise people to look heavily when they're researching canine academies, how it's spelled, how it looks, because too many people are in that black hoodie with the van with all the gimmicks and everything, with a German Shepherd or a German Shepherd, whatever, or even an Akita, like that client of mine that I mentioned. E-collar training all the way, and that's it. Nothing more, nothing less, just straight up punishment tools. Need to show the dog who's boss. If your dog's not listening to you, then you should smack it on its nose. If your dog is not paying attention to you, prod him in the neck until he looks back at you. What's the point? What are we really achieving here? If I don't know, if you had a child, for example, and the child came back from school and said, my teacher kept prodding me in the neck until I paid attention in class because I was playing with my friends or whatever, you would lose it. You would march down there and be like, what the hell did you do to my kid? Like, how dare you even put a finger on my child? You would be so like full of rage, but for some awkward reason, when you do it to a dog, it's completely fine. It's how do you put it? It's a measure that must be taken in order to cultivate that appropriate level of attention. And it's like, yeah, because holding a treat or doing something else to hold the gaze of that dog is so far out of imagination. What we actually need to do is smack, prod, hit, zap, whatever to do that. There's no way you can do it through I don't know, normal tools or anything else, whatever, or even a clicker at the worst part. That would be impossible for these people to comprehend. You need to resort to physical violence instead.
Yeah. So basically, are you saying that it's a lack of imagination a lack of tolerance, patience,
I
creativity?
do believe that's the case, because when I see someone who brags about their dog being off leash, on an e-collar, for example, and they say, "Oh, like I can have him off leash anywhere." You meet people like that, and you talk to them, and then you ask about when they're on the lead, or you realize in the moment you've never seen the dog on the lead. Most of the time. And they'll make these excuses like, "Oh, I like my dog to have its freedom, and I like the dog the fact that it has boundaries when it comes to his freedom, and he understands that when I want him back, I want him back, whatever." Okay, but at some point you're gonna have to put it on a lead. You know, at some point that gimmick will end. You know what I mean? Like, if you go to a different country, any European country, and you walk down a town road or a busy road or any type of urban environment where there's buildings, people, whatever, not like where it's rural out here kind of thing, you will have to put that dog on a lead. You will have to. Someone will stop you. You will get charged for it. Police will give you a hard time for it. Public will give you a hard time for it. You'll have to. And if you can't walk it on a lead, then what's the point? For me, like, there's no skill behind it in any way. The fact that this dog is able to be off the leash everywhere, what's the need for it? Say, for example, I'm at a train station and I don't know, my dog gets a bit too curious and jumps on the tracks. What am I supposed to do? Because if it has an e-collar, or even if it doesn't, I'm still screwed at that point. It's live electricity. I can't jump in and save my dog. And if it already has an electric component on its collar and then it starts to get electrocuted, it's definitely dying. It's not surviving that. So again, all these other external parameters that people don't consider and think about just because they're too impatient to just teach the dog how to heel on a static leash. And they've been pulled a few times and now they've lost their patience. My wife is 52, 53 kilograms. She can walk 6 dogs that in total outweigh her. And it's not about her strength or anything like that. It's the way she communicates with them and the way she, energy wise, asserts her authority in that moment in time. They know not to pull her around and not to do anything out of the ordinary. They know when we're walking, we're walking. We don't play with other dogs. We don't lunge and do whatever. We go for a walk on our normal route and then we come home. When we come home, we play with each other. That's it. Nothing more to be said or done, I haven't done that with an e-collar in any way. It's all been static leashes. That's it. I have slip leads at times. I have slip leads at times where I'm in a rush and I need to walk a dog really quickly just to whack it on and walk out. Because sometimes we'll groom them and we'll take the collars off. So sometimes I can't find the collar or whatever, and I'll use a slip leash. And again, not for aversive purposes, just because it's a bit easier to use. But other than that, nothing more than that, really. But it blows my mind that people have like a 15-week-old puppy and it's already on a prong or an e-collar just because it needs to learn the rules of life or whatever. It's like, what do you mean? You're destroying the spirit of that dog. That dog is not going to be as whimsical, as, I don't know, free-spirited in any way, because all it's learning is pain, pain, pain. I even changed my opinions on like street dog charities. Like, I used to be so for them, and now I'm kind of borderline against it because I was thinking about it like so hard in my head, and I was like, well, hang on a minute, let's just look at it from this perspective. This dog is in Romania, in rural area Romania, and his life is he wakes up, he goes to some random butcher that he's known for a few years now, eats some meat because the butcher feels bad for him, and then he goes to sleep in a cave later on, or I don't know, somewhere else that he finds out. He has a few friends that he gets on with, a few friends that he doesn't get on with. He stays away from them. Generally speaking, he has a pretty free, outgoing lifestyle, no problem. And because it's a rural area, he kind of knows where he's living, where he's going, whatever. Out of nowhere, some random charity worker takes this dog because he wants to make money, puts it in a shelter where he's already anxious because he's never been in a crate or a cage before. And then he's carted off to Tower Hamlets in London. He's called George. He has this collar on him. He's being dragged around on a leash. There's this bus, taxi, car, child, whatever, all around him. And he's never seen any of this before. And he's expected to behave. And people are already giving him a lot of pressure, a lot of remarks, whatever, because he's not behaving. And then me as a behaviorist, suddenly I'm expected to make this dog okay with all this stuff, in a short space of time as well, because again, no one wants to wait for that transformation. People just want result. That's it.
That's tragic. That's really tragic.
100%. You know, but yeah,
Right. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been
no
really
problem.
insightful speaking with you and listening to you. I'm very grateful for your time. So thank you very much.
No problem at all. I'm grateful for your time too. I wish you a good night and yeah, good rest of your weekend
Thank
too.
you. Thank you. And you too. We'll speak again soon.
Give Duna plenty of belly rubs for me, and yeah, talk to you soon.
I will do. I will do. Take care.
Bye
Bye.
bye.